The Custer County Board of County Commissioners meeting will come to order. Let the record show that today is November the 13th. Time is 9 o'clock a.m. I wonder if I might impose upon our guest, Mr. Dave, if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dave Thomas, a 60-year friend of Attorney Smith's from Virginia. Welcome.
Yeah, don't hold it against him.
Yeah, we're not going to hold that against you that you've been
In Virginia.
Or that you're going to
more that you're a friend of Clint than where you're from.
Yeah, it's actually. Yeah. Hope you didn't pick up any of his bad habits, like rolling under a horse trailer.
Virginia, what Denver is to the rest of Colorado, that controls all the politics for the whole state up there. 'Cause that's where all the population is.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Madam Clerk to the Board, would you conduct the roll call, please?
Commissioner Flower.
Present.
Commissioner Kanda.
Here.
Commissioner Prince. Attorney Clint Smith.
Present.
And Clerk to the Board, Kelly Camper, present.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Might ask you politely to silence your cell phones if you have not done so. Appreciate that. Audience introductions. We'll start over here in the proverbial chair.
Jackie Pubis for the Sentinel. Lisa Drew from the West Custer County Hospital District.
And Dave Thomas, previously identified as Clint's friend.
Yeah.
Formerly known as.
And I'm Chris with KLCR Radio. I'm here for the free coffee and donuts. But
Nice.
apparently I was sadly...
You missed him last meeting.
You can't have them if you bring them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to bring them and share
Welcome.
them.
Nice to have you here.
Tell me your last name again.
Bleach, L-E-A-C-H.
Fellow trucker,
Oh,
Bob Fulton. Just there to say hey and invite you to a meeting, so
okay.
I'll do it.
All right. Good. Well, welcome. We'll have some public comment here shortly. And amendments to the agenda, gentlemen.
I don't have any.
Nor do I. Okay, we'll move on. Approval of the minutes, October 31, November 6, November 7.
I move we accept the minutes as presented. Look pretty good. For October 31st, 6th, and 7th. We'll approve them.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from October 31, November 6, November 7. Discussion. Thank you, Ms. Kelly, for your work in that regard. I think we're okay. I didn't see anything of
No glaring errors.
no glaring errors. I wouldn't. That would be terrible. Further discussion, gentlemen? Hearing none, proceed to vote. All in favor of approving the minutes of October 31, November 6, November 7, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries. Minutes have been approved. Commissioner items. Commissioner Kanda, would you like to begin?
I have quite a bit to say, but I'm going to hold it for the end of the meeting. Most of it was related to the fiber band, broadband thing. So
Okay.
over to you. I'm sorry I missed the CES meeting yesterday, so I'll catch up on what happened there.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Prince.
I attended, as did both of you, the Veterans Dinner at Alpine Lodge Sunday. That was well done again.
Yeah, it was very good.
Did a great job. Yesterday I spent, seemed like an eternity with the tourism board. They seem to really have some things going on that are very positive. I think the board seems to be functioning real well. And that's really all I've done since a week ago today.
Okay. Bear with me just a second here. So since our last board meeting, as you indicated, Veterans Day dinner up at the Alpine, well done, as always. I attended the MRC meeting yesterday, Medical Reserve Corps. Was over at the Search and Rescue Building, and then also attended the CES meeting in the afternoon at the Search and Rescue Building as well. Central Republican Committee meeting last night at the Annex, so that's kind of the meeting schedule that I've been on. So I had some other things I would like to talk about. Did not get this on the agenda. It was an oversight on my part. I'm hoping maybe by consent we can agree. We're in the process of dealing with the insurance companies on the 2018 Dodge Durango that was totaled in the recent collision when one of our deputies had someone pulled over. The insurance company asked if we wanted to salvage that vehicle or not for $1,500. I spoke with Sheriff Byerly and Mike Halpin. It was our general feeling that we're probably not in the salvage business, but I said I don't have the authority to make that decision, so I thought I'd bring it to the board. We need to make that determination so that the insurance company can move on. I went and looked at the vehicle. The only external parts of the vehicle that, in my opinion and Sheriff Byerly's opinion, that are salvageable is the hood and the left front quarter panel. Every other piece on that vehicle was damaged to some degree on the outside.
Just worth scrap metal.
So the low bid that they put that vehicle out on bids, and their low bid the insurance company got was $1,500. So they said if you're interested in salvaging the vehicle yourselves for $1,500, that's what we'll do. Personally, I would recommend to the board we do not do that. I don't think we're in the salvage business. Trying to part that vehicle out, not knowing if the electronics and whatever else has gone to pieces on it. The vehicle was running when it was struck, so it could have damaged a lot of internal parts. Shannon Byerly said that they had a hard time keeping the motor running after it was hit. It did run, and then it'd die, and then they'd start it, and it'd choke and sputter and carry on. So I just don't see any value in us laying out $1,500 to salvage that vehicle. So I would ask by consent, may I convey that to Miss Donna and the sheriff?
Can I add, what about the light bar and the radio and everything?
That's, if we don't salvage the vehicle, then the vehicle will be taken to a company, I think it's Laws in Denver, and they'll pull out everything that they believe is functional for the insurance company, and then that'll go back on a vehicle. Once they do that, then the liability, if anything goes wrong with that equipment subsequent to them installing it on a new sheriff's vehicle, will be on us.
Okay. I'm good
Good
with
question.
that.
Okay.
Had the same thing happen to one of my Durangos.
Commissioner Prince?
Considering the amount of damage, I'm really glad the deputy's okay. I agree with that.
Okay. All right, well, I will pass that on. We need to get that ball rolling. They've been kind of waiting on us to make a decision about that. The other thing I wanted to mention, I requested and received yesterday the agenda for the upcoming underfunded court security grant process in Denver. You're on the schedule for 12 o'clock noon to 12:20 p.m.
Good, I was going to ask if we knew. It
Yeah.
helps us quite a bit.
Yeah.
So we start the noon session.
Noon o'clock, yep. Yeah, I can look at that. I thought...
No chance it come earlier than that, is
No,
It's on the 21st.
that is correct, 21st. Let me pull that. Yeah, they have a break from 10:05 to 10:20, and then they'll press on because we'll finish up at 1 o'clock.
That's
and then
good.
we'll go to lunch after that. So 12.
So we're before lunch, before they declare
Yes,
lunch, huh?
yeah, we'll sit through all those presentations before lunch, and then we have some other business to take care of after lunch, but I was going to share one other thing with you about that. Sorry. See if I can find that other email. Well, it's not that critical. I'll look it up and send it to you guys. I just thought it would be interesting for you to know what counties were kind of bookending you and what kind of amounts they were talking about. I know Archuleta County, and I misspoke the other day. I thought it was 1.5. I went back and looked. Archuleta County's requesting $2.5 million. So.
Got one guy coming to present?
No, that, you know, I looked at that as well. I thought that was interesting that, as you guys recall from us being up there last year, I think we were all struck by how strange it was for a county to be there requesting a ton of money and then have one person stand up all by themselves. This year, it looks like they've got 5 or 6 chief judges going to be on their panels for different counties as well. But yeah,
What time is Archuleta?
that's just what I was going to look up here again.
I'd like to hear how they justified it.
Yeah, got to be a total makeover.
Well, we can learn, because we're gonna be looking for money.
Archuleta goes at 8:55, so at 9 o'clock. So you guys probably won't even be there then. But yeah, they have 2 county commissioners, a chief judge, 3 county commissioners, sorry, a chief judge, and then their county administrator for that one.
We can get
So-
their presentation later, can't we?
I would guess. I don't know exactly how that all works. So, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 out of the 11 have judges on their panels as well. So, I talked with Judge Hunter this morning in chamber, and she indicated that she had a court docket that day that she would try to call in. And then Chief Judge Murphy also has a conflict. She didn't think he was going to be able to attend either. But hopefully after, at some point, following a $2.5 million ask, 30 grand may not be a shocker for him. So we'll see how
We
that
gotta up
works.
the ante.
Yeah.
Maybe you ought to up it to 300.
Yeah. Settle for 150.
Right. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up, you recall from our last conversation with Economic Development Company about sending a letter to DOLA requesting some assistance in looking for a grant. I drafted that letter, sent it to Charles Bogle for his review, and then we ended up sending that to Christy and Greg. Now, I don't know, I think you guys were probably included on that email string.
We
but-
saw the email string, I didn't see the letter.
Okay.
I got it from Charles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I wasn't
sent
copied
you a
on any
copy
of
the
it.
letter. Okay,
I
that
haven't
was.
got the letter. Charles sent it to me.
Yeah, Charles sent it to you, you sent it to me.
Yeah,
So I
was
sent
pretty
it to
upset.
Charles for him to look at, and then he sent it to Kara, and Kara sent it on. And so I never saw it after Charles looked at it either until,
So what was the mistake?
well, I transposed some numbers on the dollar request. That was what I want to talk about this morning. So instead of, I had typed in 76,000, should have been 96,000. 96,753, and I, don't ask me where I come up
I
with
thought it was
76,453.
almost
So, and that being said, then Christy emailed Charles back and said that we probably need to look at this from a new perspective because they have a new executive director at DOLA. And the mineral impact grant director is also new. So I asked Christy if she would be willing and able to come down and meet with us. She said yes. She was good for the 27th.
The lady, the other
Christy
director,
did.
or just Christie?
Yeah.
Then there was a question whether we were asking for money out of the grant. or
Right,
money-
yeah, and I thought we addressed that in the letter, but apparently there was still some confusion for that, so.
What were we asking?
How much money?
It was 97 roughly, but was
96.
it out of the grant or was it out of
No,
the new money?
no.
Is this to pay for those ancillary studies
Yes.
they had to do for the federal?
They haven't
Yeah.
done yet.
Yeah, so, of course, EDC indicates we're under a huge time crunch here, but I think it's gonna be what it is. I mean, we can't, unless we call a special meeting to meet with Christie, I don't,
Can someone explain to me what has been dragging on for how many years now?
2.5.
And now it's a
Business
crunch.
plan.
What is the problem?
yeah, I don't
Is this
know.
lack
It
of
just,
planning?
Charles said the clock is ticking on us, and
Well, unless they have a definitive reason why
yeah,
I need to jump through hoops when they've sat on this thing for several years.
yeah.
I'm good with the 27th.
Charles indicated he would be here today at this meeting. He thought he'd get here a little late, maybe during public comment. We can ask him about that, but I just think we need to back up. The 96,753 is their estimate of the expenses on that, so it was just my mistake on the amount that I put in that letter. I don't know. I'm gonna quit doing that on behalf of the commissioners, because the last 2 times I've done it,
Had to come back?
haven't performed very well, so turn that over to one of you gentlemen.
You'll see it in your performance review.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So that's what I had. I think I would ask Kara to put, if I haven't already, sorry, I know I'm interrupting you back there.
No, you're fine.
Did we get a meeting with Christy Doon from DOLA on the agenda for the 27th?
Well, you said we were gonna do something, and then you said
Okay,
we'll talk about it later.
Do you want her here at this meeting? Is that the deal?
Yeah, at the commissioner meeting, so we'll deal with it later, just.
Okay, I've got it on my list to talk
Okay.
to you.
So we don't feel that we're rushed. Would it be better to do this, like, open to the public, of course, but after our meeting? Have kind of a workshop with her, just so we don't feel that we got 6 more things on the agenda.
Oh, you mean for the 27th?
But we
Yes, when
can't
she
act.
comes. I mean, so we don't feel, or is this gonna be something that,
It would be
I don't
good.
think it'll be a long, drawn-out conversation, but
yeah.
I think we're
workshop,
gonna have
we
to
would
decide
have to
what we
just
want to
listen.
do, too.
Well, I think we need to have our little act together before we request money from her. This is our grant.
Yeah, and we had this discussion with Bogle and made that decision to make that request.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just didn't know the leadership had changed at DOLA when we did that.
Okay.
Christie said basically, hey, we got your letter. I gotta tell you, you probably better re-explain this because we have new leadership. They don't have any idea.
And we're
what
gonna,
talking
the
about.
only big discussion I see would evolve would be deciding how they're gonna handle whether it's new money or out of that grant. If it's out of the grant, how does that impact, blah, blah, blah. We gotta, and that's what we'll have to talk about with the new people.
Right.
But your decision was to not have it out of
Right.
That's right.
We had voted to request a whole new grant.
Right.
Not impacting the $1 million.
and not a match.
And they've gotta figure out
Without
whether
a
that's
match.
acceptable to do.
So, I just think we have that conversation and then maybe nothing changes. Maybe we just rewrite the letter and put a lot more explanation in it for the
Or if
two
she's got some
new
insight
folks.
now that she's met them.
So,
Well, we're gonna need to come to a consensus if in fact DOLA says we're not willing to fund a new one, but we'll give it out of the old one. Are we willing to agree to that or not?
Right.
So
We
those
need
are
to
kind of
understand their
right.
strings.
we need
Yeah.
to understand. So if this is a time crunch, maybe that discussion ought to have the contingency being, and how would we handle it if it occurs?
Right.
And in fact, the time crunch really isn't, it would be, I think, debatable because the actual deadline's the 30th or whatever it is of March. If DOLA's gonna work with us, I think they're gonna be flexible on how valid that grant is.
Because we're really speculating now, so maybe we.
So no, that's why you need to talk.
right.
Yeah, let's let Charles come and talk to us and then see what Christie is. But I would like us to say Plan A and Plan B just in case, so that we don't have to set another meeting down the road to discuss Plan
Another
B.
plan.
Yeah, I was hoping we would be able to do that in a meeting so that if we had to make another decision, we could vote
I got
during
it.
the meeting instead of a
Good.
workshop.
Fine.
I agree, the March 30th deadline, it's not a deadline, it's the end of the extension period.
Right.
I guess in a way it is
They've
a
been known
deadline,
to
but
extend it
Yeah, it doesn't mean we couldn't request another extension. It's not a deadline for the grant, it's just the end of the extension that they granted us is March 30th. So that doesn't mean the whole process comes to a grinding halt necessarily, but if we were gonna request an extension, I'd suggest we do that before the end of March. I mean, you know, in February, 1st of March.
27th of November, we could do it.
Yeah, so with that, we will add consideration of grant request to DOLA on the 27th with Christy Dune. I think that will, because I'm basically kind of treating like we're going to start over, that this letter obviously wasn't what we intended it to be. And
It needs to be fixed.
So I'm not even going to resend it, I'll just wait.
Do we need
And
to
I'll let
recant it?
Christy know.
Yes, could just disregard it at this point.
I don't
Well, you could send her just an email.
I don't think so. Yeah, I'll communicate with her that we met
Disregard,
and
we'll
we
get
discussed
you
it today.
after the
but,
discussion.
I don't want to act on it and then come back and find out.
No, she's not going to.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all been put on hold, so, yeah. Okay, that's all I have. Anything else, gentlemen?
No, sir.
Upper Ark report, I have a conflict with a meeting in Canyon City, an all-day conference. Commissioner Kanda indicated that he would be willing to attend that meeting.
I appreciate it. I cannot make it.
Okay, I was gonna ask you
I appreciate
what your schedule was, so. Did, I've got those minutes in the agenda, you want me to forward those to you?
Yeah, let me see them. And I don't have anything new from a filing point of view. They haven't rescheduled a meeting yet for the Blue Line Committee, so I push on them next week. I'll push on them in person.
I sure hope that they're congenial with what we want, not what they want.
That's part of why they haven't rescheduled, because they've been considering it.
Done?
They're working
You're
it.
done?
Good
I
news.
just want to.
Never
As long as
showed
it's
up.
not good news, they're trying to figure out how to get out of there.
So he never showed up?
No, we just had to be back by 10.
Oh, by 10 this morning? Oh.
Boy, look at that jury panel.
Are you here for a trial,
like
or are you
old
just here to
That
laugh?
was a who's who of
Yeah.
You just here to grin, or are you here for a trial, or do you want a donut?
Okay,
I'm here for a trial.
Oh, okay.
we'll move on. Attorney report?
All right, I worked with Jackie Hobby. There was one kind of a difficult one. She asked me to write the letter instead of just, check with. So I wrote a letter and sent it to her. She said it looked fine, so she's sending that one out on one of the septic violation issues. At the request you made from our last meeting where you were discussing the language of a proposed motion, I prepared that. I actually, when I looked at it again this morning, I had a couple of typos.
Yeah, I
that
saw
jumped
that.
up. So here's three revised copies.
I didn't bother sending it back to you.
Did you ask for $100,000 too?
Yeah.
Probably gonna get changed, so I didn't
Well, and
torture you
I
with-
sure am, but I hate it when I find something like that when I think I've already proofread it.
Yeah.
So. I did some research on special districts, taxation, how all that works, and that's that ties in with the issue with the hospital district, the ambulance service, and everything down the road. And then finally, a couple of weeks ago, I sent out the letter of acceptance to Colorado College for attainable housing, buying those lots in Silver Cliff. And I finally got an acknowledgement from a woman named, let me get back here where it was, Lori Seeger, who's the Associate Vice President for Finance. Apologized for a delay in getting back to me. Said they're going to have their counsel look at a few things, but it sounds from the tenor of her email that this is going to go through without any problems, so we should be able to make that purchase. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how we got hung up. Sorry, did I just interrupt you?
It's fine. I'm used to it.
Oh, really? Wow.
I was teasing. Feel free to say whatever you have.
I just
and I'll
don't know
talk
how we
about
got hung up on the 8 lots when it was really 7. That's all I was going to say.
Well, and she pointed that out, that it was, I had said 8, and that's because they didn't teach counting in law school. They taught billing.
Yeah, they did. They
Billable hours. Yeah.
They only counted in 5, 10s, and 50s.
Yeah.
So I told her, yeah, that was my mistake, and so we're going on from there.
Sorry.
Well, I'm not going to ask the same question.
Oh, okay. You could just to make yourself.
It was 8 lots, right?
But, no, it was 7. 7. I said 8, but it's
Yeah,
7.
we had talked all along that it was 8, and
And I think
I
I
don't
just
know
used
why,
that
but-
number when I counted up the ones we were talking about. It counted up to 7.
yeah.
And
So we're buying 9. There were 7.
we're buying 12, and what
Or
was
12.
19
there were
total? Yeah.
19 total. Yeah. So.
Right. Well, that first right refusal still. I read her response. I read your letter.
Okay. That's all I have for today.
Okay. Thank you. No whereases we need to pay for.
No whereas this time. Sorry.
Life's looking up. Okay. I wonder if the administrative assistant has anything
I'm nothing.
today.
Keep
Nothing
going.
at
Thank you.
all.
I'm good, thank you.
No great news and
I'm good.
okay. All
I
right.
think it should be
Noticed.
required.
Since you've been
Gotta be
here,
something.
you've never had anything to say. So one of these days, just chime in like, hey, we need a new coffee pot or something like that.
Something.
How about, hey, make your own damn coffee?
I did.
Or how about, well, I just like to let you know what's been going on or something like that. I mean, it's
I don't like talking
not
about
that you
mine.
need to, but you're welcome to any time.
This is why you're on the agenda, so you could tell us what you've been up to if you'd like to, but you don't have to.
Thank you very much. Everything is going great.
And if needed, we could always have you come up front so you could be live streamed as well. You wouldn't. I don't want you to feel awkward about doing it off camera. That's just me.
She'd be competing with me as I can.
Well,
if
that's
she
true.
actually got
That's
it.
true.
There's no competition.
Do we need to open a window? Is it getting hot in here? Okay, we'll move on. Public comment. Yes, sir.
Oh, may I sit down, Mr.?
You may. You can come forward. You can
It's just
stand. You
brief.
can stay right where you're at.
I just wanted to personally come and invite all 3 of you to our second scheduled quarter management meeting for the Frontier Pathways Scenic and Historic Byway, which has been rescheduled because of the last time we had it scheduled, we had our first little snowstorm. And that didn't affect us up here too badly, but our gentleman is coming down from Fort Collins to help conduct the meetings, and he's doing also us as well as down in Colorado City and Pueblo. So
Where is it?
as we all know, down in that area got quite a bit more snow than we did, of course.
So date, time, location.
It's next Wednesday, the 20th, 5 to 7, and all aboard. PM.
I want you to know, Bob, I was there sitting outside wondering where's everybody else because I didn't get the word.
Well, that's right. We saw each other. 'Cause
It was
I was there.
thank you, and I apologize about that
No,
at
it's
the last second, and you know, trying to communicate, and it happened that morning, or that early afternoon, and then the only thing I guess you can do, can't get it in the paper to get that day, but anyway.
I was there on behalf of Dark Skies. We're interested in seeing what we can do with you. So.
Yeah, thank you.
So you said 7 o'clock,
5 to 7.
5 to 7 at.
All aboard.
All aboard, correct. And there will be, there'll probably be coffee there, and snacks and stuff like that.
I'll come then.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, in line for Jack's. But anyway, no, I want to personally invite you, and I'll send you an email again to remind you, and apologize about the cancellation. But it's very important, you know, it's our 10-year update of our corridor management plan, and for those folks that maybe don't know what the byway is, part of our community that's been in the last, since 1994. This will be an update on that, and then also some goals or ideas we're having for moving forward.
Okay.
And a couple of our representatives came up yesterday and participated in the tourism meeting, so, and Bill got a love letter.
Yeah, thank you.
Bill got a love letter. So that's, thank you. So, any questions?
Yeah. Hey, did you invite Silver Cliff on board too?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah, I will not be able to attend. I'll be in Denver at a meeting. But I know.
what's about it.
No, we appreciate it. So Bill and Dave, if you can make it, we sure appreciate it. So,
Thank you.
Okay.
okay. Any other questions?
No,
And,
thank
and
you, I
also
appreciate it.
too, after that meeting, then I will come in and make a formal presentation and let you know where we are and where we're going.
So, I guess, I know there was some conversation, I didn't directly get involved in it. Are you the BOCC rep on the scenic byway thing? or-
I'm a board member.
Yeah.
of the BOC.
Yeah, he's
The rep from our board, but you happen to be a board member as well. I know we all three, I think, attended a meeting down in Pueblo a year or so ago.
Then we had a board meeting in July or whenever.
right. We have quarterly. We're required to have quarterly board meetings.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been attending the Central Front Range Transportation Planning Region meetings. There has not been much discussion in their 10-year plan about the corridors and byways and this and that. I'm kind of surprised about that, but
Well, it's required for all byways, and so basically things change in 10 years time, so you want to make sure to try to keep up with the times as much as possible. And just FYI, we had our annual meeting, the Colorado's Byway Program, right after the Colorado Tourism Office meeting. Big deal up in Denver, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, whatever it was. And at our thing, Bill Zwick, our president, and I were there. And we talked about West, we're from Frontier Pathways, Pueblo and Westcliff. And Westcliff, a number of people said, wow, we're getting a lot of stuff going on down there. So we're recognized, we're blessed, we're known, so, and so we're just trying to do our little part to help things move along.
well, I know CFR certainly been, that our group anyway, has been pushing to widen these shoulders. And 96 between here and Pueblo is certainly one of them.
And Tom, thanks, because that is part of the byway. That's only part of the byway that is on CDOT, and of course 165. But with our input as a byway, we can work together, we have partners to go to CDOT, and have an extra emphasis, if you will. And one thing that disappoints me, and it's not just in Custer County, I just drove a lot through western Colorado in the last couple of weeks, and I'm disappointed in not getting our shoulders mowed. Yeah. It's dangerous.
Well, that was a statewide.
That's statewide. That's what I'm saying.
It was a mess.
I did quite a bit of the western slope in the last couple of weeks, and we're not the only ones. There's just very few spots where.
I was surprised.
And I don't know what the deal is.
Where'd the money go for that?
That's why my assumption is it's going to between Colorado Springs and Denver. That's where it's
Yeah,
going.
probably.
I guess.
Yeah, more accidents since they started the GAP project in that stretch
Yeah.
versus the last 2 or 3 years worth. It's a mess. But I was encouraged that that stretch 96 from Custer County or from Westcliff to Pueblo, we ranked 30-some different projects in our region, and that highway ended up being ranked 4th or 5th in priority. What they'll do with it, who knows, but at least our group is trying to communicate to them what we think is important. And
For improvements on that.
yeah. Shoulder widening being the first
safety
priority.
issues and
And that's a statewide push too. Every region wants their shoulders widened. But,
So with that, Tom, and commissioners, is the fact that we are partners with both counties, Pueblo and Custer, in order to have a bigger voice, I guess, or more clout or whatever. In those plans. So.
the last time we met with the CDOT reps here, they indicated that generally it cost $1 million a mile to put a 4-foot shoulder on both sides of the road and asphalt it. So it's a lot of money. But, well, we appreciate it. Thank you.
So I have a quick one for you, Bob. I talked to Steve Blaswell a few weeks ago, and given that CenturyLink has dug a nice trail beside 96 on the way out, he was looking at, from a trails point of view, for Custer County trails, that it would be cool to build on what they cleared already and come up with some kind of a trails plan to connect. So you might put that on a
Yeah, thank you. And one of our board members, Bobby from RIDE, she, in that group, there's a group down in RIDE, Colorado City area, which also is on our byway. And they're doing a lot of stuff with this trail thing, the Front Range Trail. Frontier Pathways has been involved in this Front Range Trail. Dorothy Urban, our former board member, was always big in that. So those are things, and those over time can be very beneficial in helping bring funding.
So we go team up with Silver Cliff and the county and whoever else to get the grants to build that trail and some scenic outlooks as well.
So Wednesday night, you bring that up again.
Okay.
All right.
I can't remember everything.
Anything else?
I've got to run.
Write it down, Bob.
Questions, comments? Okay. All right. You bet. Thank you. Appreciate you coming in.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Everybody.
Other public comment? Morning, Charles. Thank you for coming in. Maybe during public comment, we can have a little discussion now so that I'm not sure it'll come up until somewhat later in the agenda, but we had talked about the letter that we sent Christy and Greg and the mistake that I made on the dollar amount, and basically felt like we kind of needed to restart that process again now, knowing we have a new executive director and a new manager of the mineral impact grant. So I propose that we put it on the agenda for the 27th. I think I communicated to that you in an email and have Christy come down. I don't know, do you think it would be appropriate to invite the new executive director to come along, or do you think it's necessary? I don't know how far up the food chain that position really is.
I don't either. I know.
Is that what Irv Halter was? Or is it
That's
the replacement for
Irv was,
Irv?
yeah.
So he's right under the gov.
I would suggest that we probably ought to give Christy a chance to work at first.
Okay.
I'm sure there's a lot of internal politics that we need to be sensitive to, and so that's what it's worth. I don't know more than that.
Well, she was very amenable to coming down, so I thought, probably we need to address it. I didn't know. Discussion.
And the thing about it is, I think, like I told you, we're on a calendar crunch, but basically it's their calendar.
Yeah, and we talked about that this morning. I mentioned that you and I had communicated, and you said we're kind of under a time crunch. And that time crunch, to be clear, we talked about it already just before you came in, was the fact that our extension ends March 30th. That's no deadline from EDA, that's no deadline from anything else. It's just we
That's
requested
Dulles,
extension.
yeah.
So,
But they had indicated to me informally that to extend beyond that might be difficult. I know I had occasion to talk to Greg at, I think it was the SDA conference, and he was concerned of our progress. Of course, that was before we had got all the estimates from
And they've had a turnover of their leadership, so
that,
extenuating circumstances may help us.
yeah, I mean, just off the top, I'm not sure I would be opposed to asking for a 6-month extension or whatever, but that's a conversation we can have down the road from DOLA.
Yeah.
And maybe we get a feel from Christy, I don't know.
well, we're still, the discussions we've had with the primary company that gave us the estimate for the 3 tasks, they still owe us a timeline, but it has the potential that it would hopefully be completed soon after the first of the year, once we get authorization, and then it depends on how complicated it is to get them under contract. So, like I say, it's time's not our friend.
Yeah. Okay. Well, she's agreed to come down on the 27th, and I think you said you'd be available as well. So, Commissioner Prince talked about should that be in a workshop format. mostly of the time thing, correct?
Thought it may take longer than just
But-
10 minutes.
I hope we can just get to it. If not, we could schedule a workshop. We'd have to schedule it ahead of time, but
Or the
You
next
came up
week.
with a really good point. If we needed to vote on something,
Yeah.
a workshop's not the place, so
Right.
it's probably better if we have it in an open
And
meeting.
then we can decide if we
let's
need a
grind it
workshop.
out. Yeah.
And if it just takes a little longer, it takes a little
Yeah.
longer. It's our job.
So, we're good, you think? I'll contact her and let her know that we are on the agenda. And we kind of felt like we just put this letter on hold. I mean, she did get it, but she said, yeah, we probably need to deal with this a little different direction. So I feel like the letter's been put on hold from her end. I don't think she's gonna act on that. At least I didn't get that sense, so. Okay, anything else come before the commissioners' public comment that's not on the agenda later on? Not, we will move on. Unfinished business, gentlemen?
I have, if I may, sir,
Yes, sir?
we kind of briefly touched on the last meeting, microphones
Oh,
and a speaker system
Okay.
so that oftentimes, especially when we have a lot of people, let's not take, a lot of people, they kind of look like bewildered as. I don't remember where that was. I know we had suggested talking to Vern
Right.
about maybe trying to find a system for us or something. And I just don't remember who was.
Who's gonna do that?
Exactly. And I have absolutely no problem if you'd like me to pursue that.
And then
or-
come back here and
I just
give us
wanted-
some
I didn't want to
suggestions,
just die
options
because I
that we
thought
can
that
act
was a
on.
very good topic.
yeah. I don't remember exactly either. I may have said, let me talk to Vern about it. I did not do that, I can tell you that. So
And in your minutes, Kelly.
we are
He didn't
trying to
say.
figure out if we're gonna be able to write a mini micro grant for statewide internet portal authority.
Right.
So that's been our conversation recently. Again, if I did say that I would take care of it, it fell through the cracks last week, so.
I think we just talked about it and said we gotta do it at some point.
This is, today is not a problem because we don't have a lot of people, but on days when we have a lot of people, it's almost impossible for people to hear and it's only appropriate.
Yeah, and I think if we're gonna do that, we really need a microphone for each commissioner and one for our guest. I don't wanna get into this thing of passing microphones back and
No,
forth.
we can put a little in front of each.
I wouldn't be opposed to consider just a directional mic hung from the ceilings. I see that in other commissioner chambers that I go into, but
They're sorta good.
I agree with you. I think it's something we need to do. So if you want to take the lead on that, I would appreciate it.
Okay, I'll follow up
Okay,
on it.
good. Thank you. Okay, new business. We'll allow public comment for each of the items that the commissioners will be voting on. So at the appropriate time, feel free if you want to comment on our items of business as we go through the agenda this morning. So first up is consideration of the authorization of KTLF radio station to be on our tower up on Lookout Mountain. So you're welcome to come forward, sir.
Okay,
Good
sure.
morning.
And I was under the understanding that someone from
Yeah.
KTLF would be here today, but that's not the case.
Somebody from,
Radio
KTLF.
station.
Well,
I don't know, I thought you were representing
I
them.
thought you were represented when you came in as well.
Okay, I'm from KLCR, your local community radio station.
Oh,
Right.
Come up and shake our hand.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, we have a
So we
little
can sit
mix-up
down.
because I thought you were representing them as well. So that's my, that's my mistake. And your first name again,
Paul.
Mr. Leach? Paul, thank you.
So I should sit.
You sit anywhere you like.
Or you can
Okay,
stand.
If you're,
All right.
you're not actually on the agenda as I
Okay.
thought you were,
So
so.
I have a couple of questions that I was going to ask them, but you folks might have
They
the
should be here.
answer.
Okay.
When are they talking about putting the translator up there?
Can't answer that.
Okay.
That
Okay.
was something I think was gonna come out of that conversation.
Right.
Because I understand there's an FCC window that needs to open up that is not open currently. My other question is, have they told you the power of the translator they're going
No, we haven't had any conversation with them about that.
to? Okay.
Other than they wanna
Unless
come.
you-
I am totally in the dark on this. I read what their proposal to put a tower. They gave really no details. I was hoping they would come explain to us what they're trying to do today.
And I was hoping to. And really, the reason I'm here is not to object. I do have some questions I'd like answered. Those
The only
are
thing
the
that I've
first
heard
were-
is-
were kind of technical, but
Right.
um,
Well, what did you hear they wanted to do? Because all we've heard is they want to bend the signal in here and broadcast their program.
all I know is that they have a frequency assigned, and they want to put a translator in.
Right.
That's all we've
Okay,
heard.
that's all we've heard.
That's
Nothing
all
else.
that's publicly available. And
It's easy listening is what they claim their genre is.
right, so I did have a couple questions for them, but in a general sense, KLZR has some problems just because of our geography. We've got some dead spots. So we are in the preliminary stages of an engineering study to see how to address that. And the two main alternatives are relocate our transmitter or add a translator, most likely on the south end of the valley, because that's where most of our problems are.
Where's your transmitter now?
Our transmitter is on the tower that KWMV built for search and rescue. Actually, we built it for our transmitter, but then we donated it to search and rescue, so it's right by the sheriff's office. So it's down low. So one of the possibilities would be relocating our main transmitter, and discussions have been either Deer Mountain or Teepee Hill, or alternately a translator. And so I'm here to request that should an engineering study suggest that Teepee Hill would greatly improve our coverage, that the commissioners would give KLZR the same consideration to allow us to put a transmitter up there. I mean, we're nowhere close to asking you to do that, but in the future, in a general sense, if you would give us the same consideration.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll defer to Vern here in just a second. Have you had any discussion or thoughts about approaching CenturyLink, AT&T, and locating on the new tower they just put
We
up?
had thoughts, and our research says that cell phone companies do not like FM transmitters on their cell towers because there's, and that was explained to me and it flew out of my head as soon as it flew in, but there's a technical reason why they don't want FM transmitters on their cell signal.
Good. Go ahead.
Sorry, well, I'll just speak for myself. You're our hometown radio station. If you came to me as a commissioner, because I will not speak for my fellow commissioners, and said we would like the same consideration as a new company coming in, I would certainly look very favorably upon that. So I would encourage you, if you find a way to do what you need to do and you want to come, I would welcome the opportunity to talk to you about it.
Thank you, thank you. Thought I had one other question with them. Yeah, it's a question that you wouldn't be able to answer, so.
False.
Kind of, I thought they were going to be here, so
Yeah.
I'm a little
We did too.
disappointed. but-
Well, they're supposed to be.
They indicated to us that they would be here.
Okay, but my understanding is that the FCC works in mysterious ways. You can't, when we wanted to increase our power, we couldn't just say, hey, we want to juice it up. We had to actually purchase another radio station's license for the power that we want. So related to that, installing these translators have to happen during a window, and nobody knows when they're going to open this window. So,
Well, our IT director would like to have some comments, so.
Yeah, a quick interjection. So I heard you mention that there's going to be an engineering study. I would ask that if they're looking at Lookout Mountain Tower, because of the critical nature of our DTRs and the other communication infrastructure there, that there's an intermodulation study to go along with that engineering study. That would be key, in my opinion, for us putting something else up there, because if there's going to be a powerful transmitter that could interfere with our digital trunking radios, that would be detrimental. So an intermodulation study would really just clear all of that up.
I gotta write this down because
I understand. I get you. I understand. Basically, it's
DTR is digital.
digital trunking radios.
Okay.
Those are our emergency communication radios. Those are what the fire and EMS and the sheriff's office and search and rescue all use.
Okay.
And it's a study that shows what would be the effects of FM transmission on those existing radio patterns.
And they are FM.
Have you had this conversation with KTLF? Have they done that study?
I have not seen a study, and because there's anecdotal evidence that says that the radio station does walk over our DTRs here in town. If we put them up there on one of our towers, that might be detrimental. So, before we move forward with that, I would really ask for that study.
Unless it's separation.
As we
They
would
need-
for KTLF as
What's
well.
that?
I mean, we do the same thing for KTLF.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'd be very interested to see what the results of their study would see if either one of us can consider this a possibility as moving forward.
I'm not throwing a monkey wrench.
No.
I like data points.
Right. Well, I mean, that's a great point. So you do or do not know that they've done that study? Maybe they've done it and you haven't seen the results?
We know nothing.
I would be surprised if they've done it. I think this
I would be
meeting
too.
that we thought was happening today was the very
Kind of
first
kicking
of
it off.
whatever steps was going to follow. So,
Okay, so, yeah, I'd be very interested to learn the results of that, so that's all I have.
Very
Thank you
good.
very much.
thank you, sir. You bet. Appreciate it. Sorry for the confusion. So we'll move on then. Next item of business, consideration of ownership of the Vermont Tower. Wanted to just have a discussion about that tower. I've not been to the tower. I apologize for that, but that's the long and short of that. For me personally, I know where it is. I've looked at and reviewed the lease. It's kind of interesting how that whole lease thing came about. It was written in 2006. The lease itself is dated in 2009, but everything in the lease reverts back to 2006 as their beginning timeline on that. So I thought that was a little strange.
That's meaning when we own the county.
The county entered
Okay.
into an IGA with the state in 15th of December 2009. But there's language in there that refers to the ownership of the equipment reverting to the state 5 years after their beginning date, which they treat as 2006. So either way, that 5-year window has already passed. I invited Vern to come sit in on this, as well as Gary and Roger. So unfortunately, we had to give them an estimate of a time of 10 or 10:15. So I doubt they're going to get here unless we postpone this till later in the agenda, which I would certainly be willing to do that if you gentlemen feel it's important. But
Yeah, we are.
so this Vermont Tower, as I understand it, handles our 800 radios and our, of course the name just went right out of my head, Vernon. Shortwave, VHF, thank you. I kept wanting to say shortwave. VHF radios are housed up there as well as the 800 megahertz. DTRs handled out of Lookout Mountain. So
I believe DTRs are on the.
are they out there as well?
Or on the Vermont Tower.
Was that a repeater?
Oh, you know what? You're right. Yes. DTR is handled out of there. So I've had a couple of people, one pretty adamant about, approach me, and one of them being pretty adamant about that his opinion was that he felt like we ought to give ownership of that tower back to the state because of the liability. We'd suffered a lightning strike 3 years ago up there. Our insurance company paid for that, but I just thought we ought to have a conversation to see where we're at.
So we making a buck off of it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, those are county radios.
Yeah, they're all our stuff, right?
So we're not
So we're
leasing
just-
any tower space up there that I'm aware of. I
Yeah,
sure
just a
haven't
moment.
seen anything. Yes, sir.
As a point of order, have we received a copy of this lease that you're?
Oh, yeah, we've had it on
No.
file. I just pulled it
No,
up.
I haven't seen it, unless you sent
If
it.
you have, it would have been a while.
It was not.
So we didn't put it in the packet for this meeting, if that's what you're
I
asking.
honestly
No.
feel that I am behind the 8 ball.
Okay.
I would like to read that, and I would almost suggest, can we postpone it until I read the lease?
Sure, yeah. Let me see where,
Unless this is a conversation that really doesn't, I mean, it's superficial, it's fine. I'm just not willing to make a
So-
decision.
No,
right
I
at
don't
this
think
point.
there's-
Because if we give it back to the state, then we're held hostage to them fixing the tower.
yeah,
There's issues.
and as I understand it right now,
We're using
they
it.
have a responsibility for maintenance and repair of all the equipment. There's 2 attachments to this lease, the generator,
The state maintains.
there's 2 attachments, the tower, the generator, the land, the easements are on one attachment. They do not have a responsibility for that. The other attachment's for the equipment, and they do have a responsibility to maintain and repair that. So, again, I put consideration of so that if a vote was appropriate, we could do it. I didn't think there would be anything we would vote on today, really, because I just wanted to have this conversation with Roger and Gary and
So, since they're not here, I suggest that we postpone this. Let me move that we amend the agenda to put it after the fiber broadband project as proposed by Silvercliff, put at the end of the agenda of new business, give them time to come.
Sure.
And if it's just a preliminary, it's fine, but I really would like to read the lease before I get too heavy into it.
yeah, I would second the motion, and we can have some further discussions. It's been moved and seconded to postpone this item of business till the end of the agenda. It is a debatable motion. Further discussion? I would guess that we probably need to call Gary and Roger and tell them what we're doing, because they were going to be here.
Yeah, so they should be here in just a few minutes. So
So-
just,
Whether,
You want to do it when they get here and make
let's just do it
it,
when
make
they get here.
it, make it
Can I
adjustable.
make
Sure.
a motion to that effect? I mean,
Well,
we
yeah,
not be specific on where it is on the agenda. That's why I put it at the end.
Coming over here wasting your time, let's get
I
it.
don't want to waste any.
No, not that, I meant they are already en route, so let's not waste their time.
yeah,
Roger just got here.
okay.
I have copies of that. Would you like me to make?
I can send it to him real quick.
I would like it electronic.
I'll just-
Because I write notes.
I'll email it to him real quick while we're waiting, but I know that's not going to give them an opportunity to actually review it in any
But
depth.
if
But
they
at least
refer
you'll
to
have
something,
it.
they can pull it up.
Let me do that.
Can I ask Bernard a quick question?
You may.
Vern, what's the difference between the 800 megahertz and the DTRs?
800s are DTRs.
Okay. And the DTR
So
broadcaster, for lack of a better word, there's one on Vermont and one on Lookout Mountain? Or was I confused by what that?
it's Vermont Deer Peak, I believe.
And Deer Peak?
I know it's hard to keep them all straight. DTRs stand for Digital Trunking Radio. Basically, they're mobile communication platforms. They communicate through the state. Everything that goes through them is recorded, and then they're rebroadcast to their destination.
Okay, thank you. And as long as I have you here,
Yes,
some people cannot get on the guest.
there may be too many people in the area
I see.
trying to log in.
Everybody in the jury room.
Especially
Right,
today.
That's,
They're-
yeah.
they're-
Tell the
Gentlemen,
jury that
I-
they need to be thinking
I
about jury
forwarded this
things.
to you. It says,
Not
for
circuit.
some reason, it's coming to you as an attachment B. That's not correct. It is the CWIN leaf.
Thank you.
So I will send that to you right now. Thank you, Vernon. Appreciate it. So did you say Roger's out
So
there?
he's here. Would you like him to come?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah. So with that being said, we have a motion on the floor. We're in debate of that motion. Because the motion's gone to the debate period, the motion no longer belongs to the maker of the motion, so I would move that we withdraw that motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to withdraw the motion of postponement until the end of the agenda. Discussion, no, I'm sorry, it's not debatable. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed nay. Motion carries. Okay. So, good morning. How are you? Good morning, Kit. We're on the agenda item of considering ownership of the Verdamont Tower. I put consideration on there so that if we did want to vote on something today, we could legally, by our 24-hour notice. I didn't anticipate us voting on anything. It was more of a fact-finding, let's have a discussion about Verdamont Tower. And I looked at Kit as well. I read the lease as best as I could. I understand the state owns the equipment after the 5-year period from 2006 to 2011. But the equipment went to the state. The tower, the generator, the land, and the right-of-way did not. That was a separate attachment, and that didn't apply to the 5-year thing. I don't know. So what I'd like to do, if nothing else, is get you gentlemen's perspective on that tower and what's kind of going on. I know we had a lightning strike. That was covered by our insurance. I think there's been a couple times when there was an issue with the propane or whatever, but the contract says that at the beginning of the season, the tank's to be filled by the county to prevent that from happening. At least to a minimum of 70%.
Yeah, when that one was put in, that was, where'd Kit go? That was put in on, that was a lease. That was a 100-year lease.
I don't know. It's an easement. It's sitting on an easement. It's great.
The tower's on an easement as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Tower.
So that's why.
The site itself.
Okay.
And the access as well.
Yes.
And as I indicated before you guys came in, I've never been up there, so kind of in the dark, but obviously you go up Verdamont Road. Is it then off of Verdamont Road, or is it right on the right-of-way of Verdamont?
Just keep going in terms of stay to the right and go up.
Now, did they...
Before the locked gate there.
Oh, okay. Before the lock gate?
Was that was an easement granted from Mary, though, wasn't it?
We have easement from everybody.
Both ways. Oh, okay.
Well, not through Mary's. We actually come up the hill.
Oh, really?
Where we're supposed to come in.
Because Mary, I thought that came through Mary's, because that was Mary's property.
We described it off of 182. Went through someone named Mitchell at one time, and on up to the side. Just through the trees. It's right.
Anyway, we got an easement, or right away, some kind. It's ours.
There's a couple things I want to just read real quick. In this kind of addresses what I was alluding to. In the lease, section 7A says, all equipment listed in the attachment A shall remain the property of local government for a period of 5 years from the acceptance date of December 30th, 2006 until the release date of December 30, 2011. At the end of this 5-year period, all of the equipment shall become property of the state. The local government's title and ownership of the equipment shall automatically transfer to the state. The local government shall cooperate with the state to transfer such ownership, including completing, signing, and filing any necessary paperwork. B is leasing tower space and building space to the state at the Verdamont site for a period of 25 years, commencing on this acceptance date. The state shall not be required to pay any cash lease payment. And the rest of it's kind of not pertinent to this conversation. So
that would have been the 800 system, correct?
Yeah, well, we have VHF equipment in there as well, which is our.
Yeah, that's right. John,
we've always maintained everything outside of the building, with the exception of our VHF inside. And the state's maintaining all the tower equipment and the DTR.
So let me follow up then real quick, because I think this will help answer your question, is what's on attachment A that they made reference to. Microwave dishes connected to the tower, 1 800 megahertz receiving antenna, 1 megahertz transmitting antenna, 2 to 3 7-foot racks of 800 digital trunk radio and network equipment, microwave transceivers in the building connected to the coax, microwave batteries, charger, and associated power devices. So that's inside the building. This,
Some of those things they're mentioning are hanging on the tower.
oh, okay. Oh, that's right,
The
sure.
antennas are.
The antennas would be on the tower.
Hanging on the tower.
And then attachment B is the land, the tower, the building, the generator, and the right-of-way access. Which, as I read the agreement, or the IGA, stayed with the county, but the equipment went to the state. So,
There were two options in the beginning,
okay,
and I worked with a lady named Kim Coleman. I've got her phone number. It's probably not the same person anymore. But we had two options. We could take over the whole thing at the end of that 5-year period, which is the period when you see if things are working, or they could take over the maintenance of the electronic equipment, because they monitor the electronic equipment. If something goes wrong with it, a light comes on at the Denver dashboard, and they inform us that there's a problem, and they send a crew out to take care of the problem. If it is the electronic equipment, the DTR system, we're responsible for keeping the my side of the building, making sure that the power supply is uninterrupted, which includes the generator and the drop. And then this didn't go through the special use permit process initially, but we did have a discussion with the owners up there at the time and made the commitment that we would not put other devices on this tower other than emergency communication devices. That was done in a public meeting.
that was an agreement with the landowners, not the state.
No,
Okay.
we went around. And then, of course, because the state had some input on whether there's something hanging on the tower, they would have input if we put something else on it, and then we agreed not to.
Right.
So,
Okay.
I don't know if it ended up in the IGA with the state.
Not about hanging other equipment on there. There is talk about if you do hang other equipment on there, it needs to go through a conversation with the state. But what you had mentioned initially was just with the landowners, correct?
Right, well, it was in the whole area. There were,
Okay.
probably 10 people who represented. You can see it from your place.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
Could I ask what prompted this discussion at all?
I had two people ask me, number one, who owned that? And I said, I believe it's the county owned that. And there was some question about, should we own it? Should we own the BLM land, which is a whole nother conversation. I'm not sure where that is now. There was a conversation about that, but it kind of stalled out somewhere along the
I
way.
can give you an update on that
And
later.
some of that came about the same time we took ownership of the tower from Sangre Crystal Electric, which we now own that tower up on Lookout Mountain, because they deeded that tower to us. So it was just this whole question of who owns, should we own, what's our liability? And as I read this, I keep calling it a lease because it's referred to as a CWIN lease, but it's all mentioned within the IGA between us and the state.
Right. Where you occupy the property is under an easement from the Yago.
Right.
I believe you have ownership of the land itself.
Yeah, and this
Yeah, we have an easement.
CWIN lease doesn't speak to ownership, it just talks about land.
We're obligated to maintain that land or the access and the
Imagine there's
generator,
another-
all that.
Another agreement with Yagos about the land itself.
Yeah, I
Last
haven't,
name, Kit?
Yago, Jagow.
Yago. Mary,
Mary Yago.
and her son's name is
I could say it, but I lost it. Paul.
Paul Yago, yeah. Probably now, but it was
No,
It's
Montgomery.
Montgomery.
Paul
Montgomery.
Montgomery, but probably was written under Mary.
Chuck Yago was the
Yeah,
son.
Chuck was the son.
Chuck and Ron.
There's a Chuck and Rhonda. There's a brother and sister.
But when this was all done, it was probably with Mary or not.
It
Now
was,
this,
it was
and there's
between
something
Mary and
that's,
Helen.
That was
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Helen was still living at the time.
And then the gentleman that owned the land that the access goes through had some.
okay. So the language within this CWIN is 2006, but the IGA is dated 2009. So the 5-year period was from 06 to 2011, but the IGA wasn't dated until 3 years subsequent to their start
The
date.
IGA with the state,
Correct,
not the IGA for maintenance. Okay.
with state, yeah. Yeah, happens to be the Office of Information and Technology, OIT.
Kim Coleman was the director.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, well, I won't look it up now, but
So I have a question real quick on that same line, Kit, because you've got the history. What would be the impact? Why would the state want to take it back? And what was the reason they're going to maintain those 800 radios anyway, right? Are they obligated? What's the
They're
obligation?
obligated now under that agreement.
Right. And so
If you take over ownership of it, I guess you could take over that maintenance too. I don't know that we have anybody capable of it.
well, we don't want to necessarily own it, but maybe we do. I'm just asking, is what we have good or is it
It's
manageable?
never been a problem. We've taken care of the maintenance of the generator itself, and the county's kept the road open for us when we needed to in the winter. I probably 3 times we've had to actually plow that road and get in there to it.
Yeah, since I've been on board, just 2 or 3 times.
So you just plow it when it's called for, not
Yeah,
routinely.
essentially. Essentially, that's what we do. It's like deer feet, nobody gets there until somebody shows up with the snow cat.
yeah, and I don't have a feeling one way or the other about it. I think my desire was for this to happen right here, conversation, whether anything changes or not is not paramount to me, really, unless it comes out of this conversation where we all say, yeah, you know what, maybe we ought to do something. I don't feel that. I just wanted to have a conversation about it.
People have done it different ways in different places. There's lots of these towers around the state. It was a, $600,000 project.
State of the art at the time.
And, put that in and get it going, and that was under the governor's initiative at the time for emergency communication. And there was a lot of them put in that same period of time. And they offered, as I understand it, pretty much the same relationship within the county. There are counties that were capable of taking on that maintenance, or they put the towers on property that they own. And it was easy for them to do that. But with us, it was kind of like a lot of the smaller communities, they were offered the option, we'll take care of the stuff if you make sure that we can always get there, and you provide a local person to go up and assess the problem.
So Tom, when does this expire? Roger
This
mentioned
lease is a 25-year lease.
What was the 100-year thing? Was that
That was
different,
probably the
Roger?
right
That was
choice.
the original agreement between Yagos and the county,
So this is just what the state here.
because Fire was the one that put that up there originally. Fire wanted to get off there and go up there, and they took ambulance with them. Now ambulance is gone. Fire and 800 are all that are left, aren't they?
Short
Kid.
or VHF, right? And that's,
Yeah, and the
So
VHF.
right now, this is a 25-year window. So that we've beaten up 10 years on it or something, right? What is it? When do you
13
think?
years, yeah, 2006.
Got a few years is all.
It was in the state system, so.
Continue, and then the state would probably review it and say, we don't want to do this anymore, or they may say we want to.
It, go ahead.
I was saying, reading this, it's clear that they own the equipment. The lease is in place for 25 years. I'm not sure where we stand other than to go back and say to them, if we had an interest, we want to renegotiate this. I mean, appears to me pretty clear on who's responsible for what.
Yeah.
I agree. I guess one of my questions was, is it functional? Is it doing its job still? We're okay with the equipment that's up there. VHF, can we talk about that? So who uses VHF radios?
The Forest Service, CLM, the fire department, and then it's backup for the sheriff department as well. It's actually backup for any of us local.
Okay.
We don't use it all.
It's not primary.
But when we have a federal fire, they're all on VHF, not DTR.
Okay.
Which is another interesting story about them getting grants for DTR but not using
Not
it
using
themselves.
it. Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's the situation with the DTR.
Gordon?
But that's what I was going to say. When we have, for instance, the Junkins fire, every single FEMA entity and whatnot came in with VHF radios. We were all reprogrammed so that we could speak back and forth across each other, and part of it was relayed through that tower. So it's critical essential resource.
It has the firm frequencies on it. It has all of the air attack frequencies on it. I picked up stuff on it when they were working on the Decker fire. It bounces wherever it can. It seeks a tower.
I think it's reasonable to continue. It sounds like to me the right thing to do.
Okay. Yes.
Well, I'm not sure why we're even discussing this. It sounds like we haven't accepted any new liabilities. The county is not being adversely affected by it. In fact, it's helping us. The agreement is clear that the equipment went to the state. We own the tower under a 25-year lease back to the state. I'm not seeing this giant liability that people have brought to you. That's
Yeah,
me
just,
personally.
I
I'm not
think
seeing
when
this.
that generator
As an
was struck
asset.
and blown out by lightning,
By insurance.
you know, that was probably a red flag, I don't know.
Hey, who brought up the agreement to not hang anything else on? Is that active, Kit or Roger or whoever? We're not supposed to hang any other radio equipment on there?
That was just a representation made at the meeting.
Well, I don't think it was written. I haven't seen it written.
Well, you probably have to find it in the minutes of the meeting.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, if there's an opportunity to have somebody, I know KLZR, whoever's looking for a relocation, it ought to be considered, possibly. Yep, unless there's some agreement, other than you said it was a verbal.
It's a commitment, it's in the minutes of the minutes of the meeting.
Maybe we ought to see that.
Yeah, the word I've always gotten was we can't hang anything else up on there. Never really knew why.
Yeah.
But I don't know that there is a need either,
Not
but
right now.
so yeah, I think we need to have this same discussion with Lookout Mountain. Before you gentlemen came in, it was on the agenda and nobody showed up for a discussion about a new radio station, putting a transmitter somewhere.
He didn't show up.
No.
Well,
No,
that's
and-
interesting.
As I am, I thought Paul was actually here to talk about that. He wasn't. He was here for something different. So, but I think we need to have that conversation too. I don't know how that all is going to look. And Vernon brought up a great point. We got to be careful about hanging another piece of equipment on Lookout Mountain if it's going to interfere with the equipment that we have up there right now. So, but I think that we need to have that conversation at some point, similar to this.
Agreed.
So, I've kind of lost track of where we're at with Lookout Mountain. Chaffee County Communications came on there. I think we billed them at the beginning of the year.
Cleaned up everybody else's.
And then there was some discussion about trying to acquire that property up there, and I don't know where that's going.
I'll tell you in a snapshot, had a conversation with the new, and I mentioned this in a meeting right after the CCI meeting in June, with the new BLM director on how to go about swapping that. And there is a good way to do that. She brought up, it doesn't cost anything, and it's a new program or some new opportunity. So I called the director, and who's the Canyon City guy, Roger? Can't lost his name. But, and so he was aware of that, and she's going to work with him, and so we can pursue that. But they didn't want to do that until she was in office long enough and getting her feet wet. They didn't want to delay it till now, so I haven't acted on it. No big rush.
So I think that's reasonable.
And then, you know, that overarching question is, should we own the land, and if so, why? What difference would it make to us? So,
That's what we need to work on later.
and I don't remember what the language is about who maintains the access to Lookout Mountain.
It's
It's the
us.
county?
Yes.
And that's probably on an
We have
as-needed
forever and
basis,
ever and always.
right? Yeah. Do we maintain it regularly or on as-needed?
As needed.
Okay.
I plow snow up there occasionally just in case something goes down with the TV. That's normally when it takes place, is when someone calls that their TV's out and it needs plowing. I've bladed it maybe, since we actually kind of took over, back in 79-ish. I think I've probably bladed it a half a dozen times, maybe 12 in that span of time, just because it got washed here and there. Just needed a little touch up. It's not a huge deal to do it.
Yeah, and then the whole TV thing.
Yeah.
You and I talked about that a little bit. Talk about a throwback to the 70s, you
It's
know.
kind of a shrinking group
Yeah.
of people that actually utilize it.
And unfortunately, one of the shrinking group happens to be a neighbor of mine and raises hell with me jokingly most
Yes,
of the
he
time.
does.
But there are people who,
Guess you took that over.
They can't afford it another way, so
they do actually use it.
Legit.
It'd
They
be
do.
interesting to know how
It
many
isn't going
people
away.
still use it.
I had over a dozen at one time
Yeah.
with summertime residents, full-time residents, and
So, he'll yell at me. I know he's not watching this because he's not one of those deals, but I'll tell him that I brought it up. I just wonder, number one, if there are enough people and if it's still a viable thing to be transmitting TV signals up here.
I think it's a requirement by the PUC because there are people that are on those channels. It's free TV.
yeah, it
You
is.
can't not do it, I don't think.
And at this point in time, that is relatively new equipment. I've
The
had it up
FCC,
and
I
running
should
for
say.
10 years, and that was through a government grant. I was awarded $25,000 per unit to put. Bring in analog, retransmit it out digital.
And somebody asked me why we only have two. Why aren't other TV stations?
It's a real pain to get another station up there.
Used to be
They're
just
going to
three.
need to look at another $25,000, probably now $35, to bring NBC in. That would be your three major ones that you would want. We already
That's what it was
have
originally.
ABC, CBS,
Okay.
and
Well, here's our culprit right here standing in the doorway. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. Did I cause all this mess?
Yeah, you probably. No, I'm teasing.
If you want to.
Well, come on in. We're kind of in this whole conversation. We've gone by the radio station conversation, but we could certainly revisit that. Would you introduce yourself, sir?
Sure. My name is Josh Hawkins. I'm the general manager for the KTLF radio network.
Good morning. Come up and we'll make you welcome. Hello, sir. Tom Flower.
No Camden.
just an attorney.
That's spelled with a capital J.
So, we moved on past the agenda item of considering this discussion about KTLF because you weren't here yet, so didn't know exactly what your situation was. Gentlemen, are you okay with going back to that? Do we want to postpone it till later? I mean, I know other people have...
The gentleman's here, let's hear what he has to say.
You all right with
Yep.
that?
Before we do that, can we close this out? I just don't see, I don't know why
yeah.
we're even
We don't need
discussing
to
Yeah,
discuss
well,
it.
we're discussing it because a couple people asked me to bring it up to the commissioners. That's exactly why we're discussing
That's
it.
okay, we did.
And I didn't have the knowledge, so I invited these dear ass Carrie to invite these guys.
Good enough.
So that's why.
it. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I think we're okay, gentlemen, unless you had something else. For the lease on Vermont Tower, we'll leave it.
Thanks, guys.
You all right with that? Okay. And you might want to stick around if you have time for part of this discussion. At least I look at Roger and Gary. I don't know what we're going to do, so it's up to you guys. But you may be interested in some of this conversation. All right, sir. So you're with KTLF.
Yes, sir.
Interested in transmitting radio up here.
Yes,
Okay.
we are.
All right. Floor is yours.
Okay, we are basically we're a Christian radio outlet. We have three formats. We have worship and praise. We have talk, and we have more traditional and Southern gospel music. Right now, we'd like to put out just the praise and worship music, and if there's enough interest for the other ones, at some point in time, we'd like to visit having to have more than just those there. So,
And so what does that look like for us?
well, I guess I'm not quite understanding what
So
you mean.
you would need to put some equipment on a tower.
Yep, absolutely. So it would be roughly one antenna up on, I think it's TV Hill.
Okay.
Is that where I was?
We're trying to all come to agreement that we're going to call it Lookout
It's got
Mountain.
several names.
The one that was given to me, and I
It's TV Hill,
apologize.
that's fine.
I apologize for that. On my calendar, it was 10 o'clock. It wasn't 9 o'clock, so
Okay.
I apologize for that. But yes, there would be an antenna up on the tower, and then we would need about 6 inches of a rack space or part of a table for the transmitter and whatnot. But that's all that would be there.
What's the power?
Yeah.
portion? What kind of power?
I don't think we would need more than 2 110 outlets or
Okay,
one
and
110 outlets.
how much do you broadcast?
That's determined by the FCC. I think we're looking for the ability to cover all of Westcliff and some of the surrounding areas. So I don't think we'd be pushing more than 80 watts total to do that, but I don't know for sure. My guess is it's going to be much smaller than that due to where the tower is. So.
Have you applied to the FCC for the rights to do this?
Yes.
Or are you looking to us first and then go to them?
Both. I guess it was a year ago the original request went out. I know that I've only been there for 6 months, so
went
I
out to the FCC or went out to us?
both. From what I was
Okay.
told, that was the initial information,
That's right.
and I think it was brought up before the tower was taken given to the county.
Right.
There was discussions in place.
Yes.
And FCC's their bill, or what is it called? They're basically their CP license has been granted, but unless we have a place, it doesn't go anywhere.
Got it.
So we had a couple questions. This gentleman behind you is from representing the local radio station, KLZR.
Nice to meet you.
So I know he had a couple questions. I've invited our IT director to come in, Vernon Roth. So I would ask, gentlemen, maybe it's appropriate if you want to field some questions, we could do that now. Give Josh a...
I'll let the technical questions come first.
Okay?
My concern with more radios is maybe an intermodulation study. Basically, a study showing that the effects of the proposed transmitter are not going to interfere with the radio transmissions we already have.
No, they will not.
Okay, and have you done a study to conclude that, or how would we know that?
Well, over the course of 30 years of experience that the radio station's been involved, it's not an exact thing, and I can't say for 100% certainty that something wouldn't interfere, but that's why the FCC licensed out specific frequencies so that you don't run into interference across other things. For example, if you're listening and your radio station is 91.1, you're not going to hear that 91.1 on 91.3 or the other way. And that's the way it's designed, and that's the limiting factors of it, of how they operate as far as I'm aware.
Okay, yes, sir.
And I'm not being confrontational.
I understand.
I studied this for a long time. That's theory. The effects, the ground effects, the resonant effects, all of those things need to be analyzed before you can say yay or nay. And I say this
Correct.
because we have anecdotal evidence that says that certain radio towers do interfere with our emergency transmissions. And so what I'm asking for here, I have no power to request this or require this, but I'm asking for a study showing that yes, we are not going to be interfered with.
Okay.
That's the most important thing for me as director of IT here in the county.
Absolutely, and just like any other licensed radio station as well, your emergency broadcast stuff would also go over whatever frequencies we have. So that as an additional thing, and I understand what you're saying. I don't have an official study from the FCC or from anybody. I don't know that it's ever been required.
The FCC doesn't require it because of their bandwidth requirements. But what we're seeing, like I said, is secondary effects that were not anticipated.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say it doesn't sound like, it sounds like this might be an expensive study. I'm going to just make a wild guess that you don't have tons of money sitting around to do studies.
No, we're 100% nonprofit.
I assume that would go to your Christopher Ray station, and I'm fine with that. But my thought was, I think Vern's concern is very valid, but if we had an agreement that said that if in fact it did interfere, and we'd be the ones who would determine what the term interfere means or not, that you would either change or stop.
That we'd modify our equipment as needed.
I would prefer to see an agreement like that than to ask you to put up tons of money to do this.
There would be an agreement in place, as well as, insurance liabilities and certificates that would be handed to the county's name in case of something.
Right.
Let me ask you a
That's a
question
standard
along-
I feel
contract.
very comfortable with an agreement and the study. Vern, I agree with you completely, but I'm just concerned that if you had to put up 50 to 100, I'm making up
I
numbers
know.
now, of course, $100,000 to do this expensive study. I mean, that's maybe your budget for a year, I don't know. But you know what I'm trying to say.
I know exactly.
I'm concerned about a nonprofit having to put out money for something that may or may not be a problem.
And that is something that, I totally understand. I will say, though, that what you mentioned as there being needs to adjust or change or stop, those are standard parts of any contract that we have.
Are you out of Colorado Springs?
We are.
Question? Did somebody?
I did.
Go ahead, sir.
Just along Jay's lines, just so you understand. Your name's Paul, right?
Josh.
Or Josh. Where did I get Paul?
Paul's over there.
Paul's over
Josh
there.
is here.
Vernon, we have the anecdotal evidence he's talking about is we have some of the equipment hung on the same tower here at the sheriff's office, and depending on how much transmission power there is, what he's seeing because of the ground plane, a lot of other things that cause frequency. Just because you're in that bandwidth doesn't guarantee anything.
Absolutely.
And so, how much separation is there between those antennas now? Is there a lot or is there a little? Doesn't have to be.
Well, there's about 100 yards of separation between the existing radio tower and our DTRs coming out of the sheriff's office.
Right.
As far as height separation,
Would be the issue.
50 feet.
Okay, so just as an example, and it would walk over the emergency frequencies, and I don't know how much power they're broadcasting on the other side. Do you? But Roger, do you know how much broadcast power it is?
No, I don't.
So the issue is, and he brought up a good point, is that's an empirical study. And so and we've got room, and I don't know how tall the tower is, and there is room. Tom actually built the tower, and he actually welded it, so he knows how to climb up on it. So if we have to move the equipment, he knows who to go to get it done. Now, not him. But it's possible to look at the distances and make sure that happens. But 80 watts isn't going to be much.
No, and that's going to be the output at the transmitter itself. Right. Once you have loss of cables and filters, it's going to actually come out to be
50.
Yeah, give or take.
Okay. Question?
I do. Josh, as far as budgets go, I'll trade you budgets right here, right now. We're an all-volunteer community radio station here, so we don't really have any staff that's well-versed in this stuff. My understanding is that to put an antenna, we're looking at the possibility of relocating our antenna. It's my understanding that the FCC has to open a window to do that.
The FCC decides to change its mind all the time, and the rules change all the time. I don't know that you should have to just file the permit or the request to change the height of an existing station. You shouldn't have to wait for the open auctions, which are starting out in each location.
We would be talking about possibly moving the location of our transmitter.
As long as your transmitter, so you can file the same kind of paperwork, but as long as your transmitter covers the same city, then you're fine. For example, if I was going to put up a transmitter in Pueblo, but it had enough power to cover Colorado Springs, I could still say that I was in Colorado Springs.
I see.
So.
Okay. And then my other question is there financial aspect to this request? Does the county get a monthly rental?
Yeah, there would be whatever the lease agreement is for a spot on the tower, and in wherever building that's right there.
Okay, so that's just
And-
negotiation.
Yeah.
So what tower are we talking about? The biggest tower on Lookout Mountain?
Yes,
The one we
tallest
just
one?
got. The one we just got from Sangre is the only one that has any room on it.
Right.
Because that little tower to the west, that would not be functional, I wouldn't think. So
No, it's already loaded with
I don't think you could see swings from
CCOM
it.
and
Hilltop, Jake.
yeah, Hilltop.
Jake is on the big tower.
Big one, sorry.
Can I ask a
Yes,
question?
sir.
I'm just looking at your website. By the way, KTLF stands for Keeping the Lord First. But it shows here you've got 22 transmitters already, and one of them is in Silvercliff, 250 watts on your website. Is that?
Well, that's the one that's been proposed for here. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
active.
But all right, I was just curious.
250 watts?
That's
Well,
what it
that's
says here.
the full amount that we could potentially use.
Move
but
up to.
Yeah,
But right now you're just talking 80.
we're talking as small until we can check for interference or other issues.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe this is toward Vernon, I don't know. When you guys moved your over to here, over to the SAR building, when you're driving within a 2-block radius of here, you cannot get a radio station to come. I mean, it's
Correct.
all. And we can hear your radio over our computers over here. So.
Way to go, Vern.
Is that, I mean, you're right there and you would be farther up there, but is that another, could that be an issue?
Because we do get interference.
With, and we've noticed same things. I'm assuming that the sheriff stuff is a lot of microwave towers.
What, 800 megahertz?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Microwave.
Yeah, we use 800 megahertz and VHF. What's the frequency range of that? Drawing a blank on that. It's much
One,
lower.
two. Yeah.
But I don't think we're reaching microwave level.
Okay. I do know that some of the long distance microwave stuff does cause interference of all kinds in all kinds of buildings. It doesn't matter where you are.
Computer's not heating up your soup at the microwave.
No, not yet. Just plays music.
It was interesting talking with the director of BLM communication that this tower being situated so close to people, it's a little bit overpowered.
Probably.
The one at the search and rescue you're talking about.
Yes.
Yes, sir, Gary.
I got one question. As a renter of the tower, space on the tower, do you hold the owner of the tower responsible to always have access to that tower? Say, for instance, if we get 2 feet of snow and something goes down on your end, do
Depends
you
on the
hold
lease.
the owner of the tower
No.
to get to the equipment?
Well, for
Are you
example,
responsible?
no. We have stuff that's down on the, Methodist Mountain, for example. During the winter, there's no way to get up there
Okay.
unless you rent a helicopter and you do it. And I know stations who have a few years ago when stuff, died. We don't. We do, request to have either a key to the lock or the combination to the lock at the gate so that we can go up there when needed. But for me, it's safety before the equipment. People first. So I don't send my engineer out if it's going to be crazy.
And what is your title? What is your
I'm the
connection?
general manager.
Okay, general manager of KTLF.
Yes.
So what do you anticipate happening next?
If it's approved, we would sit down and go over whatever rental agreement and fees would be acceptable and in place. And then we would just need to know, one, is there an internet provider we can use, or do we need to buy satellite equipment and have it beamed down? The last thing that usually always comes up is power. Some places will allow you to have multiple meters at one location, and some people say it's 1 meter and you pay a flat fee every month. So usually those are the next steps.
So you're looking for authorization to consider moving forward. We don't have to get into the specifics. What were you looking for today?
Just to be here and answer whatever questions you guys might have, and to hopefully we can agree to move forward.
I'm assuming the power would not be a major roadblock. I don't think the internet service provider would be a major roadblock.
No, we just had that redone 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, we had, I had JV Wright go in and redo the power and add, what did he add, 4 breakers?
So does BLM have to be notified, or should they be notified?
I would guess probably. I'm assuming most of this communication has occurred between Roger and KTLF.
Yeah.
We're very peripheral at this point. I've not seen anything in writing from KTLF, I don't think. So I guess I would suggest that whatever Roger has document-wise, if we can look at that.
Yeah, I have nothing. It's been conversation
Okay,
between
so
Bill
then-
and myself.
Okay.
For me telling him to come to you
Okay.
gentlemen, and that's where this has to start. So
Okay.
that's been our conversation.
Yes.
I would think it would be appropriate to have some kind of a formal document from you guys to us
Okay.
stating what you would like to have, what you feel you're going to need to have in order to make that happen. And then at some point we progress to some, first of all, well, eventually we're going to have to make a decision and then obviously enter into some negotiations, or maybe we negotiate before we ever decide. I don't know.
That's probably
But if I could just dovetail on that, I think what Chairman Plow is saying is that we're receptive to the concept, so bring it to us.
Okay.
And we'll talk about it, as opposed to, this isn't gonna fly, don't waste your time. So I think what we're saying is, if I'm
Yeah, I think so.
dovetailing on what you
I'm
said,
comfortable
we're
with
open
that.
to the concept and
Yeah, me too.
see if we can make something work.
Okay.
I have a problem.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I think as commissioners, we feel an allegiance to our local radio station that's been here.
Absolutely.
Don't think these are going to be in direct competition for advertising dollars. I don't know about that.
We can't do advertising dollars like a normal radio station because
Can
we
do
are,
formal asking.
yeah, so we can ask for some people to help support, but
Sponsorships and stuff.
we can't do advertisements. So you won't hear anything on us about, hey, go see, the guy at the car dealership, or
Well, a local dealership, our local radio station is basically the same. It's nonprofit. They have sponsorships, and people help support with donations. They do spots for companies. And it's really not an advertisement, it's more an informational thing. They're very careful about how they word what they're doing. I work with them closely.
okay,
Sounds like they're
And I would
complimentary.
suspect you're very similar to that in terms of,
we are.
send your $10 to us.
It's more along the lines as if you want to. Now we do have 3 fundraisers a year that go on over the air, but there's no door-to-door essentially solicitation of any kind.
So just speaking for KLCR, we are taking the position that it is indeed complementary. As a community radio station and as the only local radio station, we try to cover all bases with our programming. We have some Christian programming, but like any single type of programming, we only have some of it. So I think KTLF in the Valley would be a welcome addition, and
Sure.
we don't have any objection at all.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to ask you if you wanted to voice any concerns or position from your radio station. I think you've done that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Because I'm not sure how things are going to pan out as we move forward, I'm going to ask if, even though we're not going to vote on anything, Dave, if there's any other public comment. Is that all right with you, gentlemen, by consent? If anybody has anything they'd like to say about that, be glad to listen. But I think Commissioner Prince summed it up pretty well. I think by consensus, probably the commission feels like we can at least move forward from here, and we just need some more information and get some stuff down on paper so we can look at it.
Okay. Is there some contact information I
Yes,
can
we
send
will
those to?
certainly provide you with that. Miss Carrie, do you have a, yeah, and Kara's got an admin card back there, so stuff typically you could channel through our administrative assistant.
She's the
She'll
best
forward
person,
that
and then
on.
she'll
So-
disperse it to us.
Okay.
And at some point, if we need a contact person from the commission, we can appoint one of us to do that
Okay.
if necessary. I don't know, but
We'll see how it goes.
I move we do it with Roger. No. You're stuck.
Just remember, January I'm going.
so the general idea is though that we would probably locate on the big tower at Lookout Mountain. Okay. All right. Anything else, sir?
Not for me.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming up. Sorry about the confusion.
Oh, that's all right.
Thanks for
See
your
you.
time.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Paul or Josh.
He prefers
Either
Josh.
What is that? What does it say? Bud Light?
It might have.
No,
light.
it says, some, I thought the same thing, that it's
Keeping the
into
Lord first.
into the light or something. Yeah,
Drink light.
Kristen,
Take a break.
yeah.
And by consent, gentlemen, I request a 5-minute
Can
break.
Roger donate his brain when he retires?
Meeting will reconvene. Next item of business on the agenda is consideration of proposed language pertaining to the interim solution to our EMS issues. I think, Miss Lisa, you were here towards the end of our last meeting.
No, sir.
Okay, all right. So I'm trying to frame what you were aware of and maybe what you were not. I couldn't remember if you were in that meeting.
I was
so,
not.
Okay. So we asked council to draft some language. We were struggling trying to come up with the wording for a motion to move forward with a recommendation from the committee. And so I think in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're at today. Would you concur, Commissioner Prince?
Yeah, I mean, the committee made its recommendation and the commissioners felt differently. So
Okay.
that's where we are.
I think because we did vote on the amendment to withdraw offering to pay $4,000 for the remainder of this year for coverage outside of the hospital district, for ambulance coverage outside of the hospital district. The recommendation was that and to pay the hospital district $14,000 for the remaining quarterly for the
Next year.
the extent of 2020 until some permanent solution came to fruition. So I think that's where we're at. So, council, I would ask that you read what you're recommending to us, I guess. I'm not sure. It's a little unorthodox, but that's what we asked you to do, and you've done that, so.
Thank you.
All right, well, the proposed motion I prepared based on your discussions, and then based on, I had suggested a couple of conditions which are included in this so my understanding was this was to put something on paper that you could work from and make
Correct.
whatever modifications you wanted to. So the proposed motion would be, I move that the Board of County Commissioners shall offer to pay to the West Custer County Hospital District the sum of $3,500 quarterly for the district to continue providing ambulance services in accordance with the current agreement, meaning that the district shall provide services of the same nature and degree that it is presently providing to all of Custer County. The first such payment of $3,500 will be made on January 1, 2020, and subsequent payments in the same amount will be made on April 1, July 1, and October 1, 2020, or until such time as a subsequent agreement supersedes this plan for temporary ambulance services for all of Custer County. The maximum sum the county shall pay under this offer for 2020 will be $14,000. There are two conditions to this offer. One, that the Board of Directors for the hospital district shall acknowledge in writing That's section 30-11-107 1Q, Colorado Revised Statutes, gives the Board of County Commissioners the sole statutory authority to organize, own, operate, control, direct, manage, contract for, or furnish ambulance services in Custer County, and that the BOCC therefore has the absolute right to take back responsibility for providing ambulance services from the hospital district and to make other arrangements for such services to be provided within the boundaries of Custer County. 2, that if the hospital district is relieved of its obligation to provide ambulance services, it is the sole responsibility of the district to take all steps necessary to dissolve the mill levy now assessed for such services in Custer County, and further, that all funds remaining from this mill levy at the time ambulance services are terminated shall be turned over to Custer County. End of proposed motion.
Thank you. Lisa, you don't have a copy of that, do you?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm going to shoot this back to you so you can look at that. Thank you, Clint. Appreciate that. So, comments, gentlemen?
I think that summarized what we had discussed.
Okay.
Good job of writing it, Clint.
Thank you.
Part of me wants to say I think we need to be careful what we ask for because we might get it. Part of me says I'm not sure how the conditions of the offer would come to fruition. I'm not sure how anybody makes that happen necessarily. I've thought about this. I also thought about the possibility, and I'm just throwing this out for conversation, instead of dissolve the mill levy, is there some way we can redirect the mill levy?
What's the legality of that, I guess?
Well, my feeling from and I haven't finished doing all the research on this, but the mill levy is done through the hospital district. And I think if they're not going to be providing the ambulance services, I think we need to sever that relationship completely instead of having, and I think the mill levy was theirs, they put it on the ballot and it was approved, and they would need to take the steps to have it dissolved. The county would have to finance it separately in the future. It's going to contract with AMR or whatever other options you might have on this. But I think it needs to be dissolved and to not try to transfer it or somehow. I don't see how that's going to work.
Okay. So I guess my thinking would be then that if that's the case, then we're asking the hospital district to dissolve the mill levy. Then it would be incumbent upon us to go to the voters and ask them to reinstate a mill levy.
If that's how you want to finance it, but I think it would need to be a mill levy dedicated to ambulance service.
I say mill levy, go to the voters and ask via the ballot
Right.
to fund ambulance service for the county.
I don't see that you have to go to the voters on that. I mean, you can, well, it would be best to have a mill levy with dedicated funds coming in because this is a substantial expense for the county to take on, however you're going to pay for it. So I think that would be the way you'd have to go, but I think that's where we're going to have to head here since the hospital district has now entered into the agreement, as I understand, with Heart of the Rockies, and Heart of the Rockies doesn't want anything to do with ambulance service. I don't see how we could continue this kind of relationship with the hospital district.
So I have a similar question that Tom just asked. So right now this covers the interim. We got a year.
Right, this is to work out the
And during
details.
that time, we got to figure out whether the hospital district keeps it or we come up with a hybrid and all that. And part of that would be doing things timely enough. If you had to dissolve that mill levy, it would occur in November of next year, right? Or can you do it on a...
I haven't finished research. I'm not sure that has to go to the voters, but I'm not positive on that.
Oh, dissolve it. Okay.
I didn't get a chance to talk to Dennis Hunt on this.
To reinstate it, it probably would be, or to come up with another one you're recommending.
It has to be set aside one way or another,
Yeah.
but whether, now to dissolve the hospital district, I mean, apparently they're not talking about doing that, but if they did, that has to, well, actually has to go to court to have a judge approve dissolution of the special district, not to the voters.
Why was that an issue? Was that something because it's not a hospital district anymore? Or what?
Yeah, if they're going to dissolve, basically their charter
I see.
as a special district, it's got to be court approved because it was established through court action. But that's not what I'm understanding. They want to remain a hospital district and contract with Hard to Rockies for some of the services that are provided, but for the ambulance services to be severed, from what I've seen so far and reading how the taxation statutes relating to special districts, I think they can do that without going to the voters on it, even though the voters approved the mill levy in the first place. But I'm not finished doing my research there, so that's not an absolute answer.
Okay. Ms. Lisa, would you like to interject?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
No comment from me.
Okay. In discussion of this motion, the hospital district board member Evans made it clear that she would not support the board accepting this offer if the original $4,000 for the remainder of 2019 was not included in part of this. Did you gentlemen hear that as I did, or? So,
I was just, all I know is that when we discussed it before, they had agreed to continue the service through January 1st. Nobody.
January 20th.
20th, I mean. Nobody had talked about giving them the money to
Right.
do that. And so,
Right, which is why I made the motion to amend the original motion to strike that, was
Right.
because that agreement was already.
That's all I know about it. I haven't heard any board member talk. I haven't been in any board meetings with the hospital.
No, she said that.
She said that when she was.
Oh, when she was here.
Absolutely, she said that.
Yeah, okay, other than that.
What's the group's pleasure?
I'd like to comment.
Okay, go ahead.
This is a slap in the face. The two committees, and I call it two committees, it's really one committee, but two sides, working congenially to come up with a solution that will help the citizens of this county by totally disregarding what the committee came up with, changing the committee recommendation, putting restrictions or conditions is more of a slap in the face than anything else, in my opinion. These conditions, if it is truly a matter of law, why are we asking them to agree to something that is a matter of law, other than to slap them in the face? What we've gone from is a working group to try and resolve a long-term issue that was facing us to an adversarial condition that I think is not in the best interest of our citizens. I resent this. I don't like it. I think it's inappropriate. The $4,000, the purpose of that was to pay, I don't mean them, the ambulance service for the service they continued up until the January 20th deadline that was given to us by them. And then we were going to fund, the county would fund the mill levy for the portion of the county that was not paying its fair share of the mill levy for ambulance service. I felt it's the county responsibility to do that because it's our responsibility to maintain for the health and safety of the folks outside of the hospital district, that it was our duty to respond to that. I felt it was not fair for the ambulance corps or the hospital district to take that expense on, because it's our citizens, not theirs. But it's not this is what the committee worked together to come up with. There was no solution other than we'll have ambulance service through the year 2020. Hopefully we'll have a solution to this problem well before that. Whatever that solution is, whether it continues $3,500, there's a vote by the citizens outside the hospital district to join pay their fair share of the ambulance service. These are things that have yet to be discussed. Many things are on the table. We definitely talked about handing over our current ambulance service to AMR. Seemed like the discussion last time we sat here was, why didn't your committee come up with the recommendation to go to AMR? Because that was not what we intended to do. We intended to get coverage to the citizens of this county until we come up with a joint resolution on how we're going to do it. That was not, certainly was discussed, but never was discussed in terms of, here's what we're going to do, that was never discussed. It was how are we going to get through this hump that's coming up in a few weeks on January 20th, 2020, of no ambulance going down to a portion of our county. I feel that this motion would create a hostile adversarial role between the ambulance corps, the hospital district, and the county commissioners in the county. And I will not support this.
Okay. I guess a response. I certainly respect your position, have no problem with that at all.
Thank you.
Appreciate your honesty. I think I've made it clear how I felt about the recommendation coming from the committee. I have some questions about the conditions portion of this motion. I think that these conditions, I think the spirit behind those is to try to move forward to some long-term solution to this. Is it premature? It may be. I don't know that. I don't think, for me, it wasn't a spirit of contention or adversarialism. It was, what in the world are we going to do about coverage for this county?
That was not the goal of this committee. The goal of this committee was, the first phase of it, was to make sure that our citizens received ambulance service. We came to you with a recommendation to do that. What we planned on doing was get back together and determine what is the long-term solution to ambulance service.
That still has to be done regardless, I think.
Right.
Can I just say one thing, since
Yes.
I was the one who proposed the
Yeah,
conditions?
talk to those conditions.
And it was the first condition primarily because when we went to attended the hospital district board meeting, I got the impression from things that were said that they felt, some people at least felt, that they were in charge once we gave them the authority to provide ambulance service, that the commissioners, didn't have any remaining authority. It was up to them whether they wanted to keep it or give it up. That I saw that could be an issue down the road somewhere, and I wanted to have at least that issue addressed now, that there's an acknowledgement on both sides that you are the ones by statute that have the authority regarding whether you're going to contract for this, which is what the commissioners did when they entered into that agreement. The condition number 2 is something that can be, you could save that for down the road sometime, is about how the mill levy is going to be resolved. But I really wanted the legal issue, that there's not some challenge, well, you can't take it away unless we decide we're going to give it back to you. That was the reason for that condition.
Yeah, that's a good point. That number 2 seems to me would be part of the resolution on how you go forward, depending on what option is chosen.
I mean, that
by
one is not as
whoever.
critical to me.
Yeah. The last hospital district board meeting Jay and I attended, Commissioner Prince, sorry, and I attended, was pointed out very clearly to us that that the board felt like it was our responsibility to go to the ballot, that the hospital district did not have that.
That is correct.
That responsibility.
Regarding the mill levy?
I think that was about dissolution of.
No, what that was, what we were discussing is who would go to the electorate outside the hospital district to determine whether they wanted to join, pay a premium levy to get the ambulance service. That's what the discussion
Not to
was.
dissolve, but to
It had
include.
nothing to do with
become-
dissolving.
That's
It
just
was
one of
to
the options.
include them, to give them the right to pay their fair share.
Right.
So what else do you have to do to research, Kevin?
I still need to know if a mill levy is going to be dissolved or set aside, what the procedure is, because it seemed, what I was looking at, reviewing the special district statutes, it seemed to be their obligation, the special district, if they don't want the mill levy or are going to dissolve or whatever, it's their obligation to, but I didn't find the specific procedure that they have to go about.
So, all right. So that probably doesn't have to be done until we get into, I mean, it's not
No.
urgent, right?
And if they're not going to dissolve as a hospital district, then the issue remains, how do we get
How
rid
do you
of
get
that
rid
mill
of the
levy?
tax and then try to cover a tax or a way to cover everything?
Yeah, and it would seem to me that it would probably, you're going to have to have your own county mill levy for this particular service.
Right.
Because of the expense that's involved.
So we don't have to,
I can't help but kind of try to jump forward a little bit and think, okay, if we send any part of this to the hospital district, if they decline, then where are we? How do we move forward? Obviously, it's clear by statute that the county has the authority to do exactly what's written in number 1. I
Well,
don't-
clear to me legally. I mean,
Yeah,
that's my
that's-
legal advice to you.
Statutorily.
Right.
yeah, we don't have to, it's covering that interim period, and I think that's what you did based upon our discussion last meeting. This covers it, I think.
Commissioner Prince, could you support this motion if we drop the conditions?
Okay.
You know,
Let me ask that another way.
I understand the question.
Okay.
If we didn't give them the $4,000 for,
Correct.
there would be, okay.
And I'm not asking that so that we can vote unanimously. That doesn't matter to me. I'm just wanting to get a sense of.
I get it. Here's what I would tell you. I would tell you that I would like to support what the committee asked me to present to you.
Okay.
I was definitely part of that. I was part of the discussion. I was not an outsider listening in. I led a lot of it because I did not look at it as a committee, because we can't be on committee. I looked at it as my my advisory group and discussions with them. If you're asking me to support $4,000 less than the $14,000, I mean, no. I have to say, I want to support what the joint committee recommended that I bring to you. And it's not a significant amount of money. If it was a significant amount of money, I would think, am I really serving my constituency's tax base properly? And I think it's the right and just thing. Sometimes in law, equity is very important. It's not just what the written law says, what's fair and right and just. And in my opinion, they stepped up to the bar and they said, we will cover you from the deadline they gave us. They extended it to 2020, January 20th, 2020. I get that screwed up every time because I want to say January 20 and I don't want to, you know what I'm saying. I don't feel it's their responsibility. I feel it is the county's responsibility to pay for the people who have not paid the mill levy for ambulance service. So I still would have an issue with it if we did away with the full recommendation. I'm really opposed to the conditions. I mean, look, I truly, and you asked me to cheer you on, Clint, so here it comes. We have one of the best attorneys I have met in my career, and I mean that sincerely. Don't listen to that. And if he tells me that's the law, I believe it's correct, okay? I've asked him for personal advice many times. This is not an issue. But if it is the law, we don't need to put it in their face and say, if you want our money, you have to agree. That's wrong. That's just wrong, in my opinion.
But you would acknowledge that the hospital district did vote unanimously to cover the residents outside of the hospital district until January 20th, 2020, without any reimbursement from the county.
Absolutely agree with that. That was a true statement.
I would move that the Board of County Commissioners offer to pay the hospital district in quarterly payments $14,000 through the end of 2020 unless we find some other resolution to provide ambulance coverage for citizens outside of the hospital district.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to offer to pay the district $14,000 based on quarterly payments, either through the end of the year until we can find a permanent resolution, with the dates specified in the motion. I can read all that again if you prefer.
So you're basically stating this motion. Is that what you
Quarterly.
Yeah.
Sure.
Can I give that to Kelly so she knows what the dates are? Further discussion.
It's just the first half here.
I agree with you, Commissioner Prince. When I first read these conditions, I thought they were a little inflammatory, could be construed as inflammatory. I had some angst about that. I think that our council has done just exactly what we asked him to do based on our last meeting and the conversations there. I guess I just think that sooner or later, this horse is going to have to be ridden. We're going to have to play out something, whether it is in nice, cozy, conjoint terms with the hospital district or not. Who knows how that's going to happen? I think we need to keep looking down the road at what is best for the citizens of our county, which I think we all three believe that to be the driving force here. Whether somebody gets their feelings hurt or not, I don't really care. I think we have a problem and I think it needs to be resolved. So I am willing at this point to support the motion that I made to take care of this interim situation.
Okay, my turn. I don't want to rehash the meeting we had last week or more of it, because I hear you, Jay, and I do respect that, and I appreciate you thinking of everybody all the time.
Thank you.
I agree that the number 2 certainly is going to be part of how we resolve the problem in the end. So that goes with, that's not a bad thing to take out. And I also agree, and we've gone over it with the hospital board in public and presented the law basically for their understanding, and whether they accept that or not, it doesn't really matter. It's record. And Clint did a good job at summarizing that. And if we have to cross that bridge again some other time, like you said, we'll do that. So I'm all for the motion as stated, and we can cut the conditions.
Okay. Any further discussion, gentlemen? Public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Out of what fund?
Yeah.
I spoke to our finance officer about that. It'll come out of the general fund. Further public comment?
Can I repeat this motion to you?
You may. Did you get the written?
Here,
I did.
you want to just read it?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
I have to offer to pay $14,000 to the hospital district in quarterly payments, and you want me to list those?
April 1,
quarterly?
July 1,
Yep.
October 1.
Through the end of 2020 or until a permanent resolution is found.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we need to, well, I don't think the motion needs to state where the money's going to come from. I don't know, I defer.
That's up to us.
No, it doesn't matter.
Any further discussion? Thank you, ma'am. Hearing none, we proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Hey,
Motion carries 2-1. We will I would guess, draft up a document that,
Yeah, an interagency agreement
Right.
saying that they'll do this for the year 2020. And I appreciate you guys funding that. I understand the $4,000 post-comment, if I may.
okay?
I understand that if we pay for something that they've already approved to do, are we squandering taxpayer money? I understand that. I looked at it from a little different aspect, but I fully respect the way you looked at it. Now, of course, the agreement that the committee worked on included the payment until the $4,000 until 2020, January 20th, 2020. The hospital has certainly the right to say to us, wait a minute, that's not what we agreed to. We're not going to accept this. I just want to, that's a possibility. I just want you to know that that's.
Sure. Now, I think we're doing what
I don't disagree with that.
we need to do now. Just as a point of clarification, I don't think this is an IGA. I think that we just send them a memorandum of our decision based on the recommendation of the committee.
Right.
I'm guessing an IGA may come along at some
I would
point.
think we want some agreement saying that we're committed to pay X amount of dollars, and you're committed on first call basis to send an ambulance if there's a 911 call. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't have some agreement signed by the director of either the hospital district or the ambulance corps, whichever one they choose is the appropriate one, and you as the chairman for the VOCC.
I would agree at some point that probably needs to happen. If you think that needs to happen now, then we can move
It
forward
needs
with
to
that.
happen.
But I don't know. I'm asking, actually. You brought the recommendation to us, we voted on it. I think the committee brought a recommendation to the hospital district, they voted on it.
Correct.
But they were different.
Yes. Two different recommendations, or, yeah.
Well, what they voted on was different from
Different
what
what
we
we
agreed to
voted
them.
on,
So
right. So-
it needs to go back to them in some form or fashion.
Right, and that's what I'm getting at. What form would that look like? Do we just send a letter?
So
I
this
don't
was
mind
an
a letter
action.
as long as there's signature blocks on the bottom that we all agree to this. I mean, I don't want this to come back later and say, wait a minute, we didn't agree.
Good.
Okay.
So that's just my feeling. I'll defer to council how we feel the best we can.
Well, we can put it in the form of a letter to the hospital district, and that we would be happy to prepare an IGA if they accept what you voted on today, which is different than what they voted on. But right now,
Right.
it's still negotiating on
Right.
this.
I'm fine with that.
Would you draft such a letter?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay. Thank
I'll
you.
get it done real quick and
And
get it to you.
then disseminate that to the three of us.
When's the next hospital district board meeting?
There's some discrepancy. I did the minutes and I thought it was Tuesday the 26th. A couple of board members believe it's the 21st, Thursday the 21st. So
Either way, we can
I
get it
actually
to you.
shot an email out to the group to say what date, because obviously I missed that part. I thought I had it right, but I do not.
Well, we
I'm not
can
sure
get
I
it to
had it
her
either.
either way for their next
Yes.
board meeting.
Typically,
It says right now that
would
it's
be in the
26th.
21st. Okay, because it always follows our E911 meeting. I
No,
know
it's
that.
always the last Thursday of the month, which is Thanksgiving.
Ah,
So therefore, we thought we were gonna move it up by 1 week, and then there was some questions about getting financials together. Would we have enough time that early? So we thought we'd have it on the 26th, which is my birthday, and we could have cake and ice cream. And I thought that was a go, but then maybe it's not a go. So I shot an email out to my board this morning saying, what did we decide? Because I think I'm wrong, I think it is the 21st. No cake and ice cream for me.
so I would assume the appropriate avenue would be to draft a letter for us, or at least the chairman to sign it and forward that to the chairman of the hospital district board, Mr. Tobin. Does that make sense?
Certainly.
Yes, and I have
Okay, go ahead.
an addendum to that. I should have said it earlier. I do believe that we have the same goals in mind as the hospital district. We're not going to let our citizens at risk at any time. And I know there's been 5 calls down there on, I don't know, X times. And so I think I think this is a good interim plan. I also think because we have the same similar goals, there's I don't see any battle coming forward here. We're going to work together to come up with the plan that's best for the county, just like the hospital district has been doing with the Heart of the Rockies. That's pretty cool that they're trying to get better service, and we want to continue that. And so I would like that letter to reflect a handshake out there that says we're going to make every effort we can to do this as congenially as we can in the good spirit of satisfying the medical needs of our citizens.
Agreed.
Okay? I'm not going to battle with anybody.
Agreed. This needs to be a cooperative, unified
That's right.
decision that'll take care of the needs of our citizens.
Yeah, another comment I had too, and was brought up to me the other day, about somebody said, well, where did you come up with $4,000? And I said, well, basically, I think that was a dollar amount that was settled on based on what a mill levy would have generated had that been in place down there. And then that person also asked me, well, how many calls? I said, well, we've gone back with the ambulance service and determined that it roughly is 4.5 calls per month. Their follow-up question was, how many of those were transported? Which I think is a legitimate question. If we realize that out of those, let's say, 5 calls per month, 2 of those are transported, 1 or 2 are they got a term for it, denial of service, or 1 or whatever. I just don't know. I've always stopped at the 4.5 calls per month as a reasonable number to have a conversation about. But I think when we're talking about in terms of money, there's a difference between a call to Wetmore and a refusal versus a call and a transport to some other hospital. But I don't know. So maybe a question we can pose to the hospital district.
Questions that need to come up. One other thing I just want to put on the table. Up until we were informed that ambulances would no longer go outside the hospital district, that was several months ago, we had no interest in the ambulance. And I don't want to say no interest. It wasn't on our radar.
Right.
Just like
a lot
the
of
fire
things are.
department. It's not on our radar. If there's an issue that comes before us, we'll tackle it. So if the hospital district turned around and said to the commissioners, you know what, King's X on everything, we're going to, out of the goodness of our heart, we're going to go ahead and send an ambulance to every call out there. You don't give us anything. We want you out of our business. If we decide, we the hospital district decide that we want to seek tax revenues from the folks outside the district, we'll handle it on our own.
It's an option.
I guess the question would be to the three of us, do we say, go handle your business again, as it was the day before they came to us and said, we're no longer going to handle our people. So, I mean, this is an option that's on the table also.
Sure.
I mean, and the committees discuss this, you know, where does the BOCC come in? Now, I recognize, and I've recognized from day one, I've always felt the decision rests on our shoulders, not on theirs, even though I've heard in several meetings, well, the ambulance services will make that final decision, not you. And we go, you know, I'm not going to fight that battle at this point because it's not time for that battle. It's not right. Ultimately, that question may need to come up.
Well, you bring it up, and Jay, we talked sort of about it. We're accountable for it at large if the contractor, whether it's the district or whether it's a separate contractor, if they're not doing the job we think they are, we have to step in.
But there is separate.
If they are doing the job, then why? As long as everything's right,
That's my point. It was not on our radar until it became an issue for our citizens. Then it became a hot topic for us, and we delved in and did the best we could. So I just want to make that comment. You know, I sincerely hope we're going to work congenially and get this thing done, and we're not going to have to ask a judge to decide who's got what rights and who doesn't. And I mean, I don't want to get there. I mean, this is all one county. and we need to get this resolved. So I'm satisfied with what we did this morning. I fully understand the $4,000. It would be a waste of taxpayers' money to fund something that's already been agreed. I get that.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Next item of business, consideration of funding requests from the Chamber of Commerce. As you will recall.
Where are they?
We told Miss Kelly that she did not need to be here, that we would pursue this. She was welcome to come, but it wasn't necessary. Is that your understanding? Okay, all right.
It is.
So I've done a little investigating on this, a little research. Actually, Miss Donna, I think, really did the research, provided, I think, us with the documents. Let me pull that up. And so I know one of the questions, I brought it up, was, does the county have any business supporting the Chamber of Commerce? I think that question still looms in my mind. I know Commissioner Prince addressed that to some degree about we're here for all the citizens and the businesses. We're really talking about the businesses now. The average citizen is not going to care about the Chamber of Commerce.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Well, it might be a little embellishment, but you ask any
No wild
average
bears.
citizen in the county that's not tied to a business about Chamber of Commerce, and I would guess they would tell you that's for businesses. That's not for me. I'll stand by that statement and challenge you to go ask somebody, I guess. So, and I think we all understood and realized that we have been paying the rent for the tourism board to house themselves down at the chamber. That's not debatable.
Correct.
It's a fact. So Don pulled up the financials, and I don't want to go through 2018. I would like to start at January 2019. From that day to August 31st, we have spent $1,791, I believe is the
I think it's
figure.
more than that, Tom.
Let me pull it.
Just looking at the numbers.
1791.
Yeah, there you go.
So $1,791 of county tax money has gone to the chamber
In 19?
in 2019.
19
Yes.
only,
For the
up to
rent.
date.
For rent and other things, postage, supply reimbursements.
Guide post.
So I bring that up to just point out that we have been supporting the chamber,
We watched.
certainly outside of just rent, but nonetheless. And I indicated to Ms. Kelly when she was here that I felt like it was incumbent upon the members of the chamber to support the Chamber of Commerce. I still feel that way. But we told her we would take this under advisement.
How much did she ask for? I
Make a
lost
decision.
track.
$1,200 a year.
$100.
$100 more a month than what we were already doing.
Yeah. And my question would also be to the commissioners, where does that money come from?
Bill's pocket, he's rich.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
right.
I like it.
I vote that way.
So I guess as chair, I would ask what's the group's pleasure concerning funding request from the chamber?
Can I ask one question?
Yes,
real
ma'am.
quick? So the 150 she was talking about that she already gets from the tourism board is separate from this.
Well, no, it's part of that. That 150 was for rent. The county pays through the tourism board $150 a month rent.
So that's what we see
To the
here
chamber.
in
And that's
addition.
That's
included in that.
included in that,
So
yes.
the tourism board input is here too.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
The money that we have been paying to the chamber has been coming out of what fund?
Tourism.
All this came out. of
No.
tourism.
Well, yes.
Did the postage,
Sorry,
all
yes.
that? So
It
everything-
came out of tourism.
Oh, I do want to report about tourism in a minute.
Okay.
Sorry, changed my mind.
If it's pertinent to us voting on this,
No, it
you're
is
welcome.
not, I'm
Okay.
sorry. It's
No,
just-
that's okay. Yeah.
My light bulb went off.
Yeah, Donna explained to me, and you can see it here, that this is 5544,320 is chamber, and that's where these funds have been coming from.
If I can comment on this request. I agree, we've been a supporter of the chamber. I think the chamber helps promote businesses, which helps promote tourists, which help bring in additional tax money. This is my opinion. The request came from the chamber, not just to us. This request was also to Silver Cliff and West Cliff. West Cliff definitely voted to fund $100 a month. I can't tell you what Silver Cliff did, whether they approved it or not. I wasn't at that meeting. So it was really kind of, they wanted to go to the different counties within the organization. Within the
$3,600 total is what they were looking
Right.
for.
They were on shaky ground right now, as you probably know. Shaky ground in terms of financially, they're just basically breaking even. Their new chairperson, I think, has really revitalized this organization, has done an excellent job, but is still floundering.
Where would this money come from?
And that's a great question. It probably ought to come from tourism. I would think, because this is what the whole purpose of it is, to bring people in.
But there's more than tourism that would be, I can see value other than just tourism. These are out of state.
Well, I agree.
Right,
I agree. I mean, there's a lot of ways it could be done.
Like a community
Or we
outreach.
could just say we've done enough already and not fund an additional $100. I mean, I can go either way on this. I think it's a valuable service within the community. It helps bring tax dollars in. We are funding it significantly. Another $100 is, if make or break is $100 a month, they have much more serious issues than what we're discussing right here. So, I can go either way.
Okay, so a point of clarification now.
Yes,
You
sir.
said, well, it'll probably go through the chamber, or the tourism. They're not asking the tourism board for this money,
Well, that is right.
right? They're asking the commissioners.
They're asking the county, you're correct, you're right.
Okay,
The
all right,
county to
okay.
fund $100 a month.
And we can do that if we have the
Well, we certainly
authority.
can. We have
Whether it's the right
discretionary
thing.
funds that we can spend if we choose to for outreach and
Other
things like
than
that.
tourism.
We can, when I spoke to Sam DiNardo, we certainly can take money from the general fund as we see fit, as long as we do it with a motion. We have options if we choose to pursue them. But we have other things to think about, just not the chamber. What if, when the Saddle Club walks in and says, hey, we're on shaky ground, we need money? What if, when the next organization walks in?
Well,
To what extent are we going to fund these organizations? And it's a fair question I don't know the answer to.
so I have a comment on that for a minute. We wrung our hands in October and beat people up for $1,200 for the year, and so now all of a sudden we're going to reach in and because we think we got the money to absorb,
It's a good
other
point.
than getting into our own pot, like for outreach, or the tourism is another case too that it could be. But so you're right, where you draw the line, and we are pretty substantial here. I like the fact that the two towns who benefit most directly, immediately by the Chamber of Commerce work, although there's a lot of activity that gets them to the sites in the county. And it might bring some new people in that would buy a house, which does help the county quite a bit, and more indirect. So it's,
Yeah, if there's tax money collected, the county benefits, obviously. Just as the two towns,
Correct.
or one of the two towns, would depend on where they spend their money. But, yeah, I've struggled with this idea too of, should we be available to help organizations when they struggle financially? If they have any impact on
and the answer is probably yes.
quote-unquote tourism, not talking about the tourism board. And I think we probably do to some degree, but it kind of helps keep me awake at night, trying to decide what side of the fence I really shake out on. And I made this comment last time that I believe this should not be an open-ended agreement or arrangement. So I'm going to move that we do support the tourism board. to the tune of $100 a month.
The chamber.
Mean the
Chamber, sorry.
How many a
To
month?
be paid, $100 a month to be paid out of community outreach.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded to fund the request to the Chamber of Commerce for $100 a month.
Beginning when?
January 1. Thank you for that. I think that would be appropriate unless you think it's that dire that it needs to happen
No, I
now.
think it's fine. Friendly motion
Yes,
for the year of 2020.
2020, correct. Yes, for
And,
the year of 2020 only.
And I know we've asked this before, what's the balance that we approved for that outreach? Is it like 40 grand? Something
No, we
25?
we started with 20.
That's what I thought.
So, further discussion?
No.
Public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We will contribute $100 a month to the Chamber of Commerce.
I think we ought to have them come in and talk to us during the year. We always do that, we never follow through.
I agree with you. Show us
Let's
what you
just
do.
check them, make sure that he's spending the money right.
I don't disagree with that.
And if they need, where do we really stand?
Can I clarify one thing?
You can.
Did you say through 2020 or for 2020?
For the calendar year of 2020. Yes, that was the intent. I didn't include this in the motion. I wouldn't have a serious problem if Donna and the chamber came to us and said it'd be a lot cleaner if we just did one check. The motion was $100 per month, so I suppose
Yeah,
we
I'm
need
really
to
not in favor of
voucher
that. They are discussing doing
options.
Yeah, I don't know how to say it nicely.
we're gonna go
I
to
don't
Joe the
wanna
Loan
fund-
Shark on the
I don't want
corner
to
with
fund
the
them and not
balance.
be available in 6 months from now. I'd rather do it.
And I don't have a problem with reconsidering this motion.
We can do that anytime.
Because technically, right now, it's $100 per month. I should have thought about that. I'll move to reconsider the motion previously adopted by the board. Is there a second?
To what end?
For the consideration of, instead of $100 a month, just a check for $1,200 for the year.
I'll second it. We're not talking about enough to make a difference here.
Okay. Been moved and seconded to reconsider. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Aye.
One more vote, one of the two. We're going to move forward. So that motion now becomes back on the table for further discussion.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I thought we were just approving.
No,
the
he
12.
just said,
no,
let's
we-
stop the
no,
motion.
We just voted to
Remember, he's got
reconsider.
the book.
Oh,
To reconsider the
100 a
motion.
month.
Yes,
And
as
now-
was stated.
So are you going
Now
to
he wants to state it
restate your
differently.
motion?
No, it's back on the table. We are reconsidering it again.
And the motion was to pay $100 a month?
That's correct.
Okay,
So it's up for debate.
okay, here would be my debate. I would say let's give $100 a month, or if it's easier on our accounting department to pay them one check for $1,200, I would leave that discretion up to our treasurer or our finance person to determine what's the most appropriate way to pay it. It's insignificant to me.
Okay. I agree. Was that an amendment?
Has to.
So moved. I don't know what I said.
I was going to ask you to restate what you said.
Have Kelly restate.
So it's been moved to amend the motion.
Motions are killing me
Yeah.
lately.
It's been moved to amend the motion by adding the words "or a single payment of $1,200, whichever the finance department feels is most appropriate."
That is my,
I thought
that's
that's what you said.
exactly what I said.
Discussion on the amendment? Public comment?
Yeah, I agree that if they, if you give them a check for 1,200 and they go belly up in March,
What do you do to get the money?
you won't get your money back.
Yeah.
It'll go in somebody's pocket, but,
I would guess that would have to be an acceptable risk.
And that's why we want him in here talking to us a couple times.
I still don't think the county has any business funding them, so. You know, I mean, anybody can just walk in here and go, please fund us because
Sure.
we might bring tax dollars in, well, to the towns, mostly, but, you know, that's just
Yeah.
me.
Further public comment? Hearing none, proceed to vote on the amendment, which states that we add the words "or a one-time payment of $1,200, whichever finance department feels most appropriate." All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Amendment carries. We'll now proceed to vote on the main motion, which states that we fund the tourism board, or the Chamber of Commerce, sorry,
Would you like me to?
either $100 a month or a $1,200 one-time payment. Further discussion? Public comment? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. We will move on. Yes, sir.
Can I go back to commissioner items
You may.
that I failed to mention?
Okay.
At the tourism board meeting yesterday, I had asked at the request of the commissioners that the tourism board put together a basket or a
Yes.
giveaway for the Colorado Counties Incorporated meeting that we're all going to in December. They had on the table many of the items they're going to have. Every single one of them is a Custer County item. There was a knitted hat that's sold by someone in Custer County. They had meat from Elevation Meat Market. They had soaps and fragrances by someone here in the community that makes that.
I can look up that list if you'd like, sir.
Yeah, it's wonderful. They have spent, the tourism board has spent about $175 on these items and anticipate when it's all said and done, they'll spend $200. Their attitude was that they do not want any donations from these folks, that the tourism board wanted to pay for anything that they received. It wasn't give me a donation. I offered for me to pay for that, to reimburse the tourism board. They turned me down and they voted to pay for it out of their own fund. So this could be a really neat thing of just a lot of dark sky stuff in there. I mean, they're really putting together a really nice basket for us to give out. I meant
Yeah.
to tell you about that, and I forgot, I'm
Well,
sorry.
I'm glad you did. I'd like to read through that list, if I may, for the record. So the Custer County gift bag from the tourism, from their chairman, Deb Adams, to include a dark sky large black sweatshirt hoodie, a West Cliff short sleeve tee, Crestone coffee, a pound of beans, a West Cliff coffee mug, Rosita Mary lotion, Sangre's Art Guild 2020 calendar, West Cliff meats beef jerky, 3 kinds, alpaca woven socks from a local artist, sugar and spice Buckeyes, and other local products. Think the value will be well over $200. Will include stickers and or brochures, including or such as a discovery guide, Sangre Star Festival, accommodations, all the range, any other current literature, maybe some certificates at coffee shops, and they will finalize that at their board meeting, which I'm assuming is the meeting you just talked about.
Correct, they did.
So I also will contribute some stuff to that basket as well, and we'll take that with us. And that'll be, they don't auction those off, those are drawings. They put their name in the hat and they draw out people that can win those. So this will be the first time we've been involved in that. So I think it's appropriate and really appreciate what the tourism board has done. Falls right in their wheelhouse, it really did.
They were terrific. I called and said, I took this responsibility, Deb, could you help me? She said, done, and that was the end of that. Suggestion that maybe we asked Kara to write a thank you note and maybe the 3 of us sign it to the tourism board.
Good, so noted.
Plus they
All
had
right.
a grant that they gave somebody else that without questions asked $500. I forget who it was recently. But
They give out $500 to a lot of
they're
organizations.
going, they're
Yeah.
really standing up.
Okay, very good. Thank you for bringing that up. We will move on. That's okay. Next item of business, consideration of the fiber broadband project is proposed by Silver Cliff.
All right, I put that on the agenda, so I'll talk to it. And the reason I put it on, I did that on Friday because I had gotten a phone call into Bob Pfeiffer finally, and so I wanted to discuss it, and so you all knew. And in the meantime, Silver Cliff, of course, came on with their trustees voted unanimously to go ahead and move forward. So let me, in the new Canada vein here of being quiet when till appropriate, and not rambling on, I typed everything up, and I'm going to make it available for the record, and just to get all the data on the table, because you all asked me to meet with people, find out things, and some of these meetings and these other things. So I'm going to step through the major points, okay? All right. So we'll back up to the last meeting. I did report that I had a discussion with Sally Clark. So I started off with that, and I said Sally is very supportive of the broadband program for Custer County. Respects Mark Carmel, and it was because of her relationships as a city manager that Mark was in, as well as other governmental jobs.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but for the audience's sake, and maybe for mine too, could you remind us when you give someone's name?
Okay, it's Carmel Associates, who Silver Cliff had, and I forget, we've been doing this for how many months?
Long time.
Yeah, so...
I was thinking Sally.
And some of the questions was, because, keep in mind, Silver Cliff is the lead agency, we were not. However, we do have a broadband program, and we do care about getting fiber into the county, if nothing else from a county point of view, in order to feed our tower program with a fiber link, because it does save going after another grant after we get the towers built to get it fired up with a big gigabit feed. And so that's how this sort of got started. And so we wanted to make sure that because the lead agency had contacted this particular subcontractor, we wanted to validate their credentials, basically. And so that's what I went about doing. And other things, as you'll see as we go through here. So I said they respect Carmel and her dealings, and looked at him as a manager and a leader. And it was and she has her director of operations to become in contact with us. I reported last time. He hasn't gotten a hold of me yet because he was in Phoenix. Sally's giving some awards, a grant, I presume, to Fremont County. I think it's next week, and so she's trying to tie in a visit up here so we can ask all kinds of questions about the broadband program grant as well as other infrastructure programs. Okay, and we'll have that as soon as we can get that scheduled. I then had a discussion at length with Amy Ford. Amy Ford is the previous State of Colorado Director for CDOT operations on broadband in particular. And so, and she has moved on since to another job at a higher level. But I asked her specifically about the relationships CDOT has and the programs they sponsor by utilizing the rights of ways that CDOT have. She had no reservation at all. Bob Pfeiffer is the guy that inherited basically some of her old job, but was already in charge of the broadband program for CDOT. Bob was. He had Tom Rivera working for him as a direct report. Bob did. So she respects Rivera. Made sure that Bob Pfeiffer was engaged along with his director for this region, Allie Axley. Rivera worked directly for Bob. Both Bob and Allie have great respect for Tom. And Allie, we've all met. She was here at a meeting when we were at Rancher's Roost, when CDOT came up and discussed some things. We were talking specifically at that time about Wetmore problems. So that's Amy Ford. I haven't heard from his director, and I can't remember his name off the hand. But then Friday, Pfeiffer finally got back to me. He'd been on vacation, so I hadn't replied sooner. And he has high regard for Tom Rivera. He was his direct supervisor. Did say that they certainly support granting us right away in their highway system for use. And what they want in return is 12 fibers. In other words, they are looking at this as an opportunity to drag fiber in for their use on the highways instead of them paying for it. That's why they support us, and that's why the match in kind comes in as cash. It is a cash equivalent. I verified that with both CDOT and as what they put in, as well as Sally Clark when I was discussing things with her. How do they look at that match in kind? Now, he did say they charge for the right-of-ways. CenturyLink has requirements they have to meet to lease. They don't sell anything. They lease their right-of-way to companies, private organizations, and governments, agencies. And they are very more supportive in that they bend over backwards to help municipalities get the fiber. And the reason for that is what I just said. They want to have the safety of the highways, the deer, and the weather reports capabilities. And so they said, here's how I stated. They did say they will certainly support granting us right away in their highway system. Doesn't guarantee it, they just are going to support, talk to us, as long as the program looks viable. For the use of 12 fibers after installation. Stated it is cash in kind. They normally lease use of their rights away, but work very closely with local governments. He put me in touch with his new operations director, Allie Axley. So I called Allie, and she was very responsive, immediately called me back when I left the message. And she stated that definitely supportive of the program, has high regard for Rivera, was very supportive of helping us through the grant process. I specifically asked her, I look forward to having you come up here as we get in the middle of this to help us structure the grants to be more, because they've had experience doing this with other agencies, to be putting the buzzwords in that matter. This was sort of how I stated. They have an interest in someone else funding the program is the big deal. Then I got into a discussion with Mike Carter, Westcliff. And the reason for that was because he had been trying to get a hold of Allie. She'd been on vacation, and she asked me about him. So I got a hold of Mike to let him know, because Mayor Winkie is leaving town again. And he wants to vote for this. In general statement, they support doing this right now. He wants to get his board together, and he's going to have Bispado and one other board member engaged. So the mayor is supportive, I said right here. Wants to meet with me. He asked for a meeting, Mike did. He said, Paul said, would you meet him on Thursday to consider, he wants to consider signing the IGA before he leaves on a trip. His issue is, I think their board meeting is on the 3rd of December, which is after the deadline. Leaving on trips. So the board meets later. Mike is also trying to talk with Allie, so I relayed the discussion. Mike thought it was looked like a win-win kind of a thing, given what CDOT's wanting the fibers for. And then had a discussion after that with Dennis Hunt. I called him up. Spent about an hour on the phone with him. He says, because we had issues with, do we need to compete this contract or not? And he said, well, no. He said, not necessarily, because there's more than what is least costly. It's what's the best value for the taxpayer at large. And he said, and on top of that, there's a couple of other things that make it attractive. He said, Silver Cliff is the lead agency, and it's the best value, and it's our call we have the power given to make that decision. And he cited CRSO-11-107 as his basis for telling me what he did. He thought it was very good thing that we are working with another Colorado government agency, CDOT. It would have a little bit different angle on it if it were working with some private firm or somebody else on rights-of-ways. Was very familiar with Carmel. Respected him as a good manager / leader, not technical guy. But he did state some of the things we've noticed. He's a zealot. He stated that he has no bad experiences with him. Didn't say anything super he's gift to management, but he did say he's a good one. Like the fact that we have triggers. This is a key. The triggers, I read him the paragraph 3, and I also sent it to Clint to get his cut on what that really means. It's from a value to the taxpayer. We got 3 agencies sharing the cost. If we were to do this after the towers are in and we want to go to DOLA, we're on our own with the match money or the money to do a study. Right now, he liked the fact that we're sharing the cost with these agencies, and we talked about other counties. And this was with Sally Clark too, I didn't mention that, as well as Pfeiffer. We're dragging it up through Orfano County, and we're coming out over Highway 50. And the Council of Governments and that strategic plan, they look at that as a point where they can grab it and take it further, which means this was both Dennis and it was Pfeiffer's, or even actually. We have several options we could consider as we go for the grant, and that is we can charge them for the use, or we can put it on as a partnership where they can defray even the $7,000 that we're going to pony up and risk, and reduce that cost by having them pay a little bit to help us with the upfront study costs, or the program plan development that goes for the grant application. Same could be true with Fremont and Chaffee counties. That's something that they thought we would work as we develop the program, and then discuss options with those other partners.
I'm lost on the $7,000.
It's if you read paragraph 3, it's $63,000 for the program application, roughly $21,000 per entity, and they come in 3 payments. And the only ones at risk, the way it's interpreted, and I'll get Clint to verify that, is that first $7,000, because they got to get started. They got to get paid to go develop it and go after the CDOT commitments and the CDOT participation. So what he said he liked the fact that we have triggers to stop and with bailout with no more expense. And of course, if we don't appropriate, it dies anyway. So we can elect not to do it later on and just let it die if we felt that was the right thing. So that led me to a couple other points. And this included from the discussion that I gained from everybody that I had just mentioned, as well as Carmel. I called him up to verify that, in fact, they have the option to include the cash in kind, and it's big enough to make sure that we are confident that the grant will cover that loop of installation with the presence, with the points of contact to pick up the service. So first of all, I noted that Silver Cliff is requesting our partnership, as I mentioned before, based on the fiber optic feasibility analysis they had completed, and we all attended that meeting. We have an opportunity to pursue the model that Rivera that did for the state of Colorado, and it is truly what he actually did was several. Maybe it's several. I think they made a statement later on. I'll mention 1,500 miles of CDOT highways that he worked with government agencies and other organizations to get the CDOT program, just like we're asking for. So I said we had an opportunity to use that model that he developed personally, and this is another reason, the due diligence. We could say, well, maybe there's another company that has that. Well, there is not another company that the state of Colorado, me asking questions, has a guy that actually developed the program for CDOT to work with other agencies to get support and match funds with grants. So that put my mind a little more at ease. And then what they do is, if some of these programs, they lease it to telecom operators for sustainable revenue in the future. So we've already talked about that. Silver Cliff, that's what got Silver Cliff in the first place. They want to have a source for other revenue. We don't necessarily care from a county point of view, although we do need it for the towers. And at some point, if a private contractor came to us in the future and we had ability to lease some fiber, then it's a source of revenue with no risk. They just hook up at their own time. So it intrigued me. Custer County, like the state of Colorado, may own our own fiber broadband infrastructure to lease to an open market for sustainable revenue. It's just what I said. Just as the state of Colorado is doing in the model that they developed. So I just made that point. Tom Rivera is the chief architect for the state's government-owned fiber optic broadband infrastructure, and I mentioned the 1,500 miles already. And he also established 7 intergovernmental partnerships connecting all Colorado's institutes of higher education. So I verified that also, and I asked Bob Pfeiffer and Axley and even Sally about those programs. So they're real. Then another point is the unique scope of services under this IGA. The IGA allows us, it's not a turnkey thing where we say, all right, go off and do it, and we're not going to be involved in the development of the program nor the development of the grant itself. So the IGA, under this IGA, I think I agree with this, is a robust with the state and federal government writing, partnership building, leasing contract negotiations, telecom excavation permits, all those kinds of things that will involve our participation as government entities that are participating. All right, we know that Silver Cliff is contracted under an agreement that Jay, you helped, I guess, give an opinion initially when it got started, and I don't know much about that other than that it's been tossed around by the town of Silver Cliff at some length. And the IJ was modeled after the Silver Cliff's agreement with changes that West Cliff had input in already. And that doesn't mean that we can't have some input into, if we're not comfortable with the way it's worded still, before they go for it. And I got that from a discussion with Buck after the fact here that they think it's finalized. They've got West Cliff's input, and I don't know how we stand yet because we haven't discussed it. All right. And we already know this. I just wanted this in the record. All the voters here have opted out of Senate Bill 152, giving us a policy direction and legal authority to seek results this IGA provides. In other words, we can chase broadband. And just as a side note, it is number 3 on our strategic plan. It provides controlled growth in the rural areas because of home-based businesses from the county point of view. And of course, it benefits the 2 towns. All right, Custer County, we know we have a plan for the cell phone towers. And I pointed out this already, but I have it in the paragraph here that the fiber broadband infrastructure plan the IGA requires will strengthen the cell towers, seek to reduce our liability exposure. In other words, give us more reliability on the connectivity, less hassle. And let's see here. Finally, a couple more last 2 points. Custer County Commissioners, we have participated, all of us have at some point. I think, Jay, you were on the last call of the Upper Arkansas Area Council of Governments when we got the update, and we interviewed with the guy that was building that plan as well, the broadband strategic plan. And the broadband, and it was adopted by the COG on our behalf, in effect, where we made sure that that plan included what Custer County is already doing from a broadband point of view as part of the big picture for the Council of Governments. But we're not held hostage to anything that they would do that would cause us to go back to the taxpayer and get money in order to complete it. So I thought it worked out pretty well. And so further identifying fiber optics broadband service is a top priority for us. So just to summarize this, I think it's a good opportunity. It's probably rare that we have an opportunity to team with a couple of our own agencies, as well as 2 joining counties, to help defray some of the cost and help advocate this with the USDA for the money. It helps us. There's no such thing as a guarantee, but it certainly improves the likelihood that we should be able to at least get the money that we're asking for. Now, we got to make sure it's the right amount, and that's the thing to move ahead. So, given all that, I would move that we support the IGA with whatever modifications we do in order to help get this moving.
If you would, Bill, could you clarify your proposal, your motion.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't understand it
Okay.
completely.
Yeah, all right, yeah, because I was
It's okay.
putting it, because I
just
didn't
wanna
write, and I
get my
knew
head
that we would go through a revision. I didn't want to resolve it and then dissolve it. But I would move for approval of the IGA as presented with, after we review and make sure that it covers our concerns, if any, and call, and that's my motion.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the IGA after we review it. Discussion.
I have a couple issues. Not issues, questions, really. First one is, one of my biggest concerns was, and I think you addressed it right off the bat, I was under the impression, apparently incorrectly, that we were mandated to put something like this out for bid. And you say that is not a necessity.
Right.
I'm surprised, but I accept that. And the second is, we don't have this budgeted. Have you thought about where this money?
Well, I did, and you know where I got it was from you. When we first had the meeting in Silver Cliff, and we were tossing this around in the background, and we looked at the big picture, 63,000, because you remember that presentation? It looked good, but it was going to be blah, 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 blah. And we said, my goodness, this is exactly what we want. And then we made some statements, well, we could probably fund that, we could probably find the money. But then Tom, in our discussion, Tom said, well, that sounds great too, but I think it's better if they all have skin in the game. I agree. And we said, at that time, where would we get the cash to do that? And in my view, it goes right back to the same place we always dig deep in the well. It's the general fund outreach, community outreach fund that we have been using in the past, or we'll have to look at. And that's something that we would have to discuss. Unless we need it for this motion, we can get into it. We'll defer to this.
I won't support the motion if it comes out of community outreach.
Well, then we got to figure out where it comes. I
You
haven't.
guys may.
And I didn't-
telling you up
I
front,
didn't,
I wouldn't support that. That money, I think, was the spirit of that whole line item.
Yeah, I agree. I just threw that out. We got to figure out where it comes from, which I think we can find.
I'll be honest with you, gentlemen. I think, and I've voiced this before, I just do not like voting on motions based on something that's going to happen after the motion. If we want to review it, let's review it and then approve it, or approve it like it is.
Okay, if you want to.
I just struggle with that.
Well, I was just trying to accommodate if we. I don't know. Did you look at the IGA in depth, Tom?
I did.
You have. Have you, Jay?
Yes.
And Clint, have you? So I will modify that, and I want to approve it as written, and then we can debate whether it's adequate or not. And I would like to hear, Clint, have you got any input?
Well, just that the obligation, like you said, has the triggers. I mean, the $7,000 is the risk. There's deliverables, and they got 45 days to come up with the first thing before you're committed to pay any more. And then 95 days is to have the whole complete plan for you. And if you don't feel that they're delivering what they're supposed to do on time, you can bail out legally. But
You
the
don't have-
7,000 is going to be
Right.
gone.
And Tom, you had a good point, because I wasn't thinking, because I keep thinking that we've got time. Right now, Westcliff wants to move sooner than later because of
Silvercliff
Paul,
does.
well, Silvercliff does, and then Paul Winkie wants to move pending, if we backed out, I'm sure they would have second thoughts. I did talk to Mike, and you came in just as I had already talked to him, that we had discussed it. Paul asked to get together on Thursday. So I would leave it open, because we do want to close this out, if at all possible, for that to move forward.
Can I offer a friendly amendment? Chairman Flynn was 100% correct, and I probably was too quick in jumping to second this, although I did. I don't know what changes we'd be making, so I'm not sure what we're approving. And I agree with what you said, Tom. You're correct.
Right.
So, my suggestion would be, totally up to you, that we approve it as it's written, and then if we choose to amend it, we can come back and do that at some point. But
Sure.
just a friendly.
That's what went through my mind initially last night.
Tom's point is 100%.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Chairman Flynn.
You're right, Commissioner Prince.
So, for the process then, you've offered that up as a friendly amendment.
I did.
I'm fine with that. Commissioner Cantor, you all right with?
Yes,
Would you restate your motion then, for the record?
All right, I move that we approve the IGA as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve the IGA as presented to include the expenditure of $21,000 on a $7,000 per deliverable basis. Is that
That's the IG, that's per the IG.
further discussion?
Repeat that last, to include.
To include paying $21,000 on $7,000 installments, driven by their deliverables, their ability to deliver the terms of the agreement. I wonder, gentlemen, if it'd be appropriate to request Miss Donna to come over and have a little discussion about
I'd like that.
where the
Where
money
the
comes
money's
from.
coming from.
Yeah,
She's probably the one.
nah, she goes in
Goes
one.
late.
Yeah. So, can I ask a question?
You may.
Um,
We're gonna get to public comment eventually,
Well,
so.
just to, if down the road, any one of the entities decides to pull out, what does that do to the project?
Pull out, as in,
Well, like $7,000 down,
Right.
and we decide, yeah, we think this is a little hinky, but the other two want to go forward. What does that do to them? I mean,
I'm guessing, to answer your question, if one entity pulls the plug, then that's probably gonna stop the
Flushes
entire
everything.
project.
Unless
Unless they
the
wanna
two
fund
want to,
it.
yeah, come in
Right.
and pick up the
Unless they
slack.
want to fund it.
and that is, you're right, that would have to be, because what we're pushing forward is an interagency cooperative here that is gonna benefit, and that makes the case strong with the USDA. It would be a lot weaker without it.
And is this IGA available for citizens to peruse?
It probably will be once it's been approved by all the entities. I don't know that it's been published
I
prior
don't
to
know
that
what
happening.
Silver Cliff has done with it, other than giving it to us.
I just looked on the website too while you were speaking, and I could not find the strategic plan. I thought it was on our website. If it may be.
It
that
is.
couldn't
I had,
find it.
what did they do to it, Kara? We found it when you were gonna get Vern to redo it.
He said it was gonna be on there until December 31st, Vernon told me.
Right.
It would be
Yeah.
on.
Maybe I couldn't find it. So, Miss Donna, thank you for coming over.
Oof, is this gonna be a test?
Yeah.
I'm assuming
You know all the answers.
I'm assuming you've been privy to our conversation up to this point via live stream,
And
but
I
That's
have
what she-
not.
That's the
So-
first time. Don't admit it.
we're in the period of debate on a motion to approve the IGA with Carmel Group to the tune of $21,000. Paid $7,000 at a time, based on their giving us the deliverables of that grant. So I think our question to you would be, where will $21,000 over the next 95 days come from if it is not coming from community outreach? Because that's off the table.
Could what they're doing be considered a capital outlay?
No, this is to pay for a plan.
And it's communication,
Yes.
so probably grounds and building communication. Not that we have 21,000 sitting there, but that would be a good fit for the spot.
We got some, we don't know what the year-end reserve is gonna be yet either.
No, it's not
Be the first thing.
close, yeah.
So my initial reaction was, I'm sorry I asked the question because I didn't like your answer. So I'm assuming that obviously we have money in grounds and building. Probably not $21,000. I could look, but and that money there was a purpose for that money being in there. So do we fund that line item through a fund balance, or I don't know how that happens.
And you absolutely could. Your call. I would make a supplemental budget and pay that out of grounds and building and backfill it with fund balance to make that happen. Because I believe 21,000 could take us over for the year on our expenditures of what we had said, and I don't want that to happen.
Because we have other commitments in.
Grounds and building, we've not had any propane
Right.
or the heating at this point up until now. So usually that's all accounted for, what we have in there.
Do you know of a better way to go about funding this motion?
Yard sale. I do not.
Okay.
Whatever you decide, I will make happen. But it is a matter of really going into the fund balance, I believe. But, if it's a worthy project, yay. I mean,
Well, from my perspective, two things. One, we didn't budget for it. We actually knew it was on the table when we went through our budget, but I
Right.
think it got dropped through the cracks.
Did.
Mr. Mike, would you care to weigh in, sir?
Yeah. We're meeting tomorrow afternoon to try and make our final decision as well on this. And we had some concerns, I think those are minor concerns, same concerns you folks had. I can't say what's gonna happen for sure, because I can't speak for our board, but, it's definitely on the fence right now. So.
Okay, I appreciate that perspective. Thank you.
And of course, it's a three-entity IGA, so we're either all three in or we're all three out.
Well, and that's, I think, where we were headed. What happens if somebody pulls the plug? My response to that was, then the project probably goes by the wayside, at least temporarily. If the town of Westcliff votes not to sign it, then I think we're dead in the water with Carmel Group. Is that a fair assessment from your perspective? I mean, it's not addressed in the IGA.
What would probably happen if that means we bail, then I don't think Silvercliff, I think they'll go ahead and apply. I don't know how that'll play out.
Well, I also think that if we approve this, that we'd be putting a huge amount of pressure on Westcliff to go ahead and approve it too.
Darn.
Not wanting to be the odd man out. And I mean, you're big boys. You're gonna do it, and girls, but you're gonna do whatever you feel's right for Westcliff. But,
Yeah, that's a good point. It's timing is how that all happened, right? I mean, we could have been the last meeting scheduled just as well. But to Commissioner Canada's point, what Silvercliff would decide to do if one of the three entities pulled out, one of the other two entities, has nothing to do with where we're at, really.
That's right. Would you have the money or not? Is it value to the county or not? Feasible.
Go ahead.
if I may. Going back to what Ms. Donna said about fund balance, I just want to reiterate a comment that I made during the budget hearings, that the taxpayers gave us money to take care of the taxpayers, to do what we feel is best for the county. We've obviously, for years now, have been involved in broadband, getting broadband in, thanks to Economic Development Corporation. We're on our way. Hopefully we can get the rest of the funding for the tower project. This is an adjunct to that. I've always felt, cap what I'm about to say, we must keep a large amount of money in reserve in case of emergency. However, it's not the best use for our funds for our citizens. So if we decide to take money out of the reserve to fund this, I think that's what that money is there for. So I am not opposed to taking $21,000 out of reserve to fund a worthy project like this, and I think you say you use those exact words, if it's a worthy project, and I agree with you. So I'm just making that comment.
Yeah, I would like
because
to echo
I wanted
that.
to hear myself
One
talk.
thing to point out, Jay, is
Yeah.
that's a good point. Silver Cliff, in effect, has that same attitude because they're cashing in CDs to
I
cover it.
understand. Well, we're all, and I'll tell you just from my affiliation with Westcliff, they just don't have $21,000 sitting in a drawer
They
somewhere to
wanted
fund
to-
it. They're gonna have to make some sacrifices too.
No more tennis courts.
The real question is, they didn't ask us this year for it, we didn't fund it. But
And a point of clarification, Donna didn't say she thought this was a worthy project. She said if we
it was a
determined
worthy
it was worthy.
and that, I
Correct.
used her words for that.
And then you turned around
I
and
turned-
indicated
He
that
took
she-
credit for it.
If
I
I
just want-
misstated
yeah.
that, Miss Donna, I apologize.
You said that you agreed with her statement completely.
Well, I agree with her statement that if you felt it was a worthy cause,
Okay.
we should do something.
Got it.
That's what I was agreeing to.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Bogle, would you like to weigh in, sir?
No, sir.
All right. Don't ever want
I
to.
think our position on this whole action has been verbalized,
Okay.
and we still have reservations, and I'll let it stand.
Okay, yeah. I ask out of politeness to give you the opportunity if you wanted to. I don't believe we take offense that you don't, because you're exactly right. You've weighed in on this. I struggle with a couple things. I appreciate your presentation. It was succinct and to the point. I was able to track, I think. And
Good.
and I appreciate your efforts in doing that. I think we recognize that brings value to all of us, and we all need to do the same thing whenever it's appropriate. Just try to be succinct and to the point. I don't want to stand in the way of progress. Gosh dang it, I never signed on for these kind of decisions back in November of 2017.
Yeah, you did.
That's a bunch of bull. No, I did. And how could we have ever budgeted? I mean, I guess we could have addressed it this year. It's not something, we're not gonna look into a glass ball and say, oh my gosh, we better budget for this because this might happen.
Can't do it for everything.
So, I know it's easy for us to sit here and pass motions to spend money. But I think we gotta always ask ourselves, where in the world's the money coming from? And I think another point that I've asked myself, if we had to go back to the budget and cut $20,000 out to make room for this, would we do that?
That would have been a
And to Commissioner Canada's point, man, we beat people up over $250 during the budget hearings.
And
But now we're getting ready to drop the hammer on
And
21,000.
but you're right, and that's why, I don't think we'd be dipping into the reserve for $1,200, but for something like this, that's what the reserve is for. Like to Jay's point, if it is going to improve the quality of life here in the county as well as bring in business, and I gut wrenched over that, whether it was right to get behind this 100%, and that's the reasoning I went through when I presented.
So the other question I have, I look to Mike and to you two gentlemen. So we do this, comes up with this plan, what happens next and how does that get funded? I don't buy, oh, we just go to USDA and get a grant. I don't buy that for 1 second.
It's not the plan. That is exactly what it is, Tom. It is not a plan. It is an application for the grant. And
The
that's
next point you're saying, or?
no. It's what this means. If we go forward, Carmel is going to be the lead that helps us apply for that grant, put the program plan together that structures the business plan for Sally Clark and the USDA to say looks like they got a good opportunity. It looks like the business case is there. The county meets the criteria. We want to make sure we do it, and we also have an informal agreement that CDOT cares enough to help us help develop that case forward for the grant. Doesn't guarantee anything.
Right.
But
Maybe I misunderstood. or I wasn't listening. The latter
Or both.
probably being if we fund this plan through Carmel, he's going to write a plan.
He's going to write a
That's what the IGA
program
says.
proposal for and a grant. That's what it is. Whatever it says. We got it. Here it is.
To research and consult with the owners for the development of a fiber optic broadband network infrastructure plan.
Yes.
We're going to get a plan from him. What is next? I can't answer that. If somebody were to ask me that, I don't know what I'd tell them. I'd make up something to save face, but probably wouldn't be accurate.
Would the answer to that question come from what is the plan going to say? And of course, we don't know that until the plan's developed and presented to us. To me, it's similar to the strategic plan we paid a lot of money for with S. Brands. We know we needed help for S. Brands. We went to her. She produced a terrific product, I feel. And then it's questionable what is happening with that product now. And that's a discussion as we're speaking. And I suspect this is going to be very similar. We're going to pay a lot of money, $62,000, we being the community, to receive a plan that will help us move forward with getting fiber into the community. How, when, where, why? That's what I hope to learn from the plan.
I'll have to look at this. That is exactly part of it, but it also, in task B, and I don't have all of B here, I think it goes into, the whole intent is to put it together and apply for the grant. And so, let's see where,
If I could just, I feel if we don't plan for the future, it's never going to happen. And whether we
yeah, here it is, listen.
hang on one second. If
Okay.
we waste this money, we being the three entities, waste this money, okay, at least we had the foresight to attempt to do something that'll benefit this county in the future. If we do nothing, I guarantee you nothing will happen.
Okay.
That's kind of how, I've had a change of heart in this. I really was opposed to this for the longest time, but the more I think about it, the more I realize, you know what?
Got to do something.
We've got to plan for the future. And we may end up with a plan that is absolutely worthless. But you know what? We don't know that until we have a plan.
And if it's worthless, it's our fault because we had the opportunity to engage as it being developed. Now listen to this. Item 8. It says, complete within 95 days from the date of this agreement a focused, grant-ready fiber broadband network infrastructure plan competitively organized to apply for and secure federal, state, and private funding to install fiber broadband network infrastructure for...
Let me respond to that. Okay, let me comment.
Putting the grant together.
My first fear was I didn't feel Carmel had the ability to deliver what he promised. After discussions with Sally and others, I believe he can deliver. Or he certainly has the potential to deliver, whether he will or not. At first, I really thought, and I used some derogatory terms, thinking of carnival barker and other things that I regret have ever said. And now I feel the man does have the ability to do this. Whether he does or not, as time will tell. But I've had a change of heart in this because I did some more research and found out, you know what? I was wrong.
Well, and they also are securing their high confidence in getting CDOT participation. That's part of it, which is
I believe we would get that with him or without him. It is
probably
in
because
CDOT's
they want to do it.
It is in CDOT's best interest to lay fiber down, and if someone else pays for it, they don't have to.
That's exactly
They're
right.
rah, rah,
Point I
rah.
made, but they make a big point about securing it.
But the plan that is presented to us hopefully will be a roadmap which will help us in the future. And the roadmap is not CDOT bring fiber in here or let us put fiber in. That is not the plan. The plan is part of CDOT because we have to have them to get the fiber laid. We can't go through all the private property. We could never afford to do that. But that's not the part of the plan I'm really concerned about. I'm concerned about what do we do once we have a plan? How are we going to move forward with it? And I think if Carmel delivers what he says he's going to deliver, because I read it again many times, if he really delivers, we're gonna have a grant-ready proposal to move forward. Is it USDA? I don't know, probably, maybe not. Is it partially DOLA? Maybe, maybe not. And maybe he's gonna say to us, but did you even think about, and I don't know who it is, some other federal government,
Well,
Connect America.
and I mentioned that
I don't know.
in my little spiel. It's not just USDA. They are open to anything, provided it's enough money to execute it. If we can show with USDA only, fine, it can be accomplished. It's up to us to apply it to whatever grants we want to go for.
But he'll give us that roadmap if he delivers
Right.
on what I've read over and over in that document. At first, I didn't believe he had that capability. I do believe he has that capability now. Whether he does or not, time will tell us. That's kind of how I feel at this point.
Mr. Vogel, I've asked you this once before. I'd like to ask you again. You can decline to answer if you so choose, sir. But I struggle with this term. 2 words in here bothers me. Grant ready. We know this will not ever go anywhere without a ton of engineering. I'm not trying to set you up. I truly don't know. I think about the other grants we were involved in. Do we get to the grant and then they request the engineering? Should the engineering be done to strengthen our position to go to the grant?
Preferring to say that I've already told you what I think of this process. It is not a process that economic development would recommend. We're a believer in studies, and there, I think the previous report that Camille did for Westcliff, while it reinforced the idea of the, what some of us are calling the Tri-County Fiber, and I think at best its cost was projected based on experience, but without benefit of a detailed engineering study. That's not what we would have recommended.
Right. Well, so, I mean, we're in it. We're in the throes of my question right now, right? We go through, we've spent X number of dollars, in this case, 63 grand, and then the first, I believe, the first obstacle we're gonna run against is somebody's gonna say, okay, you need an engineering study. We're gonna be back to the well to finance an engineering study. That's my concern. Yes, sir.
My understanding of this is that the plan that we need for a grant application does not need to have engineering. In fact, they prefer that it does not have engineering. Engineering will be paid for in the grant. The grant will pay for engineering as part of the grant. That's going to be very, very expensive.
That's what we thought dealing with EDA. And
Well,
And where did
and
we
that's,
end up?
but I'm gonna say it again. That is a program, it becomes a program then, which includes the right amount of engineering, the right kinds of contracts to be written by people that are gonna go execute it. That's the difference. And it is a business plan, and it includes getting the money to fund the program. It becomes a program at that point that would include the right companies to execute installation of the fiber optics.
I just
I'm
sit here
comfortable,
wondering
that's just
if-
my position now, based on my
if we are going to have the intestinal fortitude when the time comes to say we're pulling the plug on this because we're not spending any more money.
can do it.
I would be amazed. I'm not arguing with you, Mr. Mike. I appreciate your input. I would be amazed if we're not sitting here in the next 2 years looking at another $100, $150, $250,000 expense to move forward with this. If we don't, I will be the first to admit that I was a naysayer, and I apologize. I just don't know. I mean, we're there with the broadband tower
Crystal ball,
project.
we would know.
Pardon?
If we had, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't interrupt, I apologize. If we had a crystal ball, we would know whether we made the right decision or not. I think the best decision is not, let me rephrase that, it is not the best decision to make no decision. That's how I feel. let's make a decision if we need to. We have ways out. It's not super expensive, and we can see how it's going. And you're right, we may end up with more expense. But who knows, we couldn't get a grant for that engineering study. I don't know the answer to these things, but if we do nothing, nothing will happen.
So, the last thing I'll say, I'm not gonna say anymore.
No, it isn't, I know you.
No, it is. I'm done. I've had a lot of experience, government programs, personal programs, and no program goes the way you plan.
Of course.
And there's always some gotcha that's gonna come up. But if you, it's true in the state government, federal government, and my own home building something. Plan's only as good as the minute you write it and the minute you start to execute it, you gotta work the changes. The key is to minimize the risks, and I believe that we have done that. And I'll repeat it again. Dennis Hunt even agreed. You got the triggers to bail, and we put at risk 7,000. I don't think anybody's going to crucify any of us for not trying to do the best you can. You can only make a decision with the data you have at hand, and as long as it's with good intent and not some shell game. You can point the finger. I'll stand tall. I'll say, yeah, I voted to spend $7,000, and with the outcome of megabytes bigger, however you wanted to say it, but the outcome has a big benefit for every citizen in this county. So I'm done.
Yes, sir.
An input that I have not previously given. There seems to be a degree of urgency in this process. One of the things that we have done individually and selectively in the past is to get partial funding for a study like this from DOLA. And I guess that has not been raised as an alternative because of the feeling that we've got to do this quickly. And that in the last workshop, there was a description about, yes, none of us like the amount of time that it takes to do these things, but in fact it does. And I guess, as an alternative, I'm wondering why we haven't pursued that alternative for at least partial funding.
Good question, but the lead agency is Silver Cliff, and they didn't do it. So, given the facts,
Yeah.
I'm good.
I guess I haven't sensed this need of urgency other than the entities just said, are we going to do this or not? And I can understand if we're going to move forward, let's move forward. I don't think anybody said if we're going to move forward, it's got to be by tomorrow. But
what's the idea? It's going to be.
But we are in the cycle for possible. That DOLA would be.
Well, we're in
their cycle.
We're also in the USDA cycle in March. Same thing. So we got to act sooner or later, and we've got the opportunities.
yeah, I could certainly be wrong in my perspective here. I think we need to be a little careful about how many times we go to the DOLA well. Maybe not. Maybe they don't care. I don't know. Maybe they fund things that they feel is appropriate. Doesn't matter how many times the county asks. But if we're going to make a run at DOLA for 97 grand,
DOLA wants us to be successful when it comes to broadband. And it just seems like we're leaving state organizations out of this process, which may or may not work.
and I would think eventually we would go to DOLA if we need funding for this project.
If it turned out.
I'm just not sure about going to DOLA for funding for this plan. That's, I guess, where I'm shaking out.
I think USDA also cares about helping this county with broadband for their own personal reasons as well.
Further comment, gentlemen?
Nope.
Public comment? Yes, sir.
I know that Silver Cliff is interested in getting in on this round of the USDA grant cycle. And that is because we don't know where that money's going in this round.
Right.
Or how much of that money is maybe going away in this round, and how much is going to be left
True, Sally.
in the next round. So I know that's their thinking on it, and that's why there's some urgency about this. We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who or anybody or how much is going to be applied for in this first round, and I don't know how much of that's going to go away. But I know that the pool of money that they have is not
Right.
infinite.
No, it's $200 million in each of those
It
three
is what it
categories,
is.
so. I'm gonna get ready to vote, and I'm trying to get my mind wrapped around that. And I wanted to bring up one other thing. It's not a challenge, I just don't understand what you mean when you say cash in kind. It's either a cash match or it's an in-kind match, from where I sit. If
Okay,
there's
wait.
something different.
The way they explained it to me, that's why I brought up the fact they charge people to lease their right of way. And if we wanted to pay for them to do that, we could pay $25,000 to CDOT, and that would be our cash. However, because we're a government agency, and CDOT has a vested interest in spending somebody else's money, government-wise, they look at this, and so does the agent. Even DOLA. DOLA does the same thing. They have a cash or a match in kind as well. And this counts, according to both Bob Pfeiffer and Sally Clark. And you can get that right. You can quiz her people that she sends in here more. But it is, and by the way, if we can't get it, it stops. If that is not the case, as both CDOT and then Tom Rivera has done this with other agencies, match in kind, then we really were stupid, right? We lost $7,000 because it's not true. And from what I'm going to count on what the people that talk to me about it in it, I believe them. Just to try to help you put your mind. And I asked that question, Tom, specifically because you have brought it up in 2 or 3 meetings.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor of supporting the two other, all in favor of
Would you like me to read it?
funding the Carmel Group plan for $21,000 in $7,000 installments, say aye.
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 I was so reluctant.
I had the same reluctance on the broadband tower.
I'm so
Term
reluctant.
for I.
But I'm
Motion
telling you,
carries.
if we don't move forward, we're moving backwards. We have to take a chance now and then. I feel this is risky,
Not much a chance.
but I feel it's such an important cause, we have to take the chance. I'll just make that comment.
Chair will state the result of the vote. Motion passes. We will support the IGA for $21,000. Any other items of business come before the group under new business?
Can I just say one thing?
Public comment.
I think, and Clint, maybe you can say yay or no, nay, but when you asked if the IGA was public, I think once you guys vote, once it's been in a meeting, which I need a copy of the IGA, if I
Send
can
it
get
to
one.
your
I got it right here. You want a
It
hard copy?
becomes public.
Should be
So
unless
you
there's
can
some
get,
confidential legal issues that.
And that's kind of where I was headed, was
Thank
until
you.
we vote on it.
Well, citizens are gonna say, what did they just spend $21,000 on? And I'm not even clear. I'm not sure y'all are clear on what you just spent $21,000 on, which kind of concerns me a little bit, but
I feel we bought a plan to help get fiber in.
I have watched over the years so many times when we had to, in order for this grant, we have to spend more money, and it's just like, I don't know. I don't know how I would have voted if I was one of you guys, but it just, the citizens need to know what you just voted on.
You get good broadband in Rosita.
No,
There you go.
Will I after this?
Better potential.
No.
Better potential.
No, I probably will. CenturyLink goes right, the
They
new
will.
CenturyLink probably will
They're gonna wire.
grab it, but.
Well, there's no sense beating a dead horse.
Anyway, thanks, guys.
Without reading the plan, you wouldn't know what was in the plan. I agree 100%. You didn't get to vote, so you didn't need to read the plan. I get that.
Of course. And I
So
didn't
moving
say I
forward, no, I know, you did not say that. But moving forward, I think it is inherent upon us to make that a public document. I suppose anybody could have requested that document from Carmel. I don't know.
Actually, from Silvercliff. Silvercliff owns.
So, well, not anymore, they don't.
Well, until we sign,
I mean, we'll all own it.
right?
Yeah.
It'll be ours.
So, no
They may be
pressure,
the lead
but it's all
entity.
up to you guys.
It's really not a plan. What we just agreed to was an IGA to get the plan to go after a grant. The IGA spells out the process.
Like the studies that have to be done to be,
Right.
in order to move the
It's part of the,
EPA
it is
thing
part
or
of the,
whoever, yeah,
part of the
forward.
It's part of the
Right.
thing.
Whether there's gonna be another one down the road, well, we got this one, but now we need this one. You just don't know. And I know
None of
that.
this is known,
I know.
but
I
if we
know.
don't do something,
I know.
nothing will get done.
And I'm not complaining, I'm just
Yeah,
my
I understand. Your
observations.
point's well taken, I get it. I'm not real comfortable, trust me.
That was the most reluctant I.
Well,
I've
yeah, I
seen.
think so, and I think part of me wanted to vote against that, but part of me wanted to say, if you do vote against the flower, how in the hell do you ever expect any forward momentum in this arena with the six tower thing notwithstanding?
That's my point exactly.
This is
I don't
a
know.
big deal.
I mean, CenturyLink came and did their thing. We'll see what impact that has.
Understand what CenturyLink has done currently is limited by their responsibility to the federal government to not provide anything more than what is at 10-1.
They're gonna do the bare minimum, no question about
right.
that.
Now, that's good for a certain element
Right.
of our community.
Right. And if it wasn't, that fund would never been made available. It may not be a benefit enough to satisfy us.
But it's a benefit to me. I'm one of that element with 175 kilobytes of DSL. And CenturyLink's gonna give me about 40.
So I would hope in the big scheme of things, if this moves forward, if the six tower project moves forward, if CenturyLink does what they say and they're supposed to do with the money that they've been given, you add all those three together, we should be in a different place than we are now.
That's right.
Now, if we don't believe that, then we should be voting no against anything.
That's right.
And I don't disagree. I believe that we will be in a different place. But
Including
it's
investing
going to
in
be
a new
painful
car if we-
and it's going to be expensive. No question about it. Hopefully we can minimize the amount of money that we have to spend that we don't really have. That's my concern. So, other public comment before we move to adjournment. Sir, thank you for being here. You're a patient rascal. I can give you that, man. I wouldn't have.
I want a Virginia comment.
First of all, I don't get lunch unless I sit here quiet.
Yeah, I'm ready. I move we
Well,
adjourn.
let's find out who's going to buy lunch.
Thank you for letting me sit here and watch you participate. You have a wonderful
Grinding
community
sausage.
here, and I think the citizens of Custer County are well served by you guys and the way you watch out for how you take care of them. And I also would say that coming from a community right outside of Washington D.C., seeing the collegiality by which you make government go, certainly foreign from anything I have seen lately.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that. So we have a motion to adjourn. I'll second. We're moving to second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. We're in adjournment. Thank you, Dave, for your comments. Appreciate that.